And it didn't blow up.
No. Ah!
Hi, this is Dale Lear, designer of TRS-80 Color Baseball, and you're listening to CoCoTALK.
This is CoCoTALK, the world's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy Color computer. It's time to drop your socks, grab your real-time clocks, and let's rock.
CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world, keeping the Tandy flame alive. We may be mocked, but we'll never stop, cause CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world.
Welcome to CoCoTALK, episode 279. Special guest, Frank Linhares of Retro Rewind.
CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world, keeping the Tandy flame alive. We may be mocked, but we'll never stop, cause CoCoTALK is rocking the 8-bit world.
Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hello.
Let's
Hello.
see.
Are we live?
I think we are.
No,
I
this
hope
is
so.
a rerun.
And let's hope the internet holds out today, because 2 hours ago I didn't have any.
Now you
So,
tell us.
Well, I did earlier, and
Oh.
everyone was sleeping.
It wouldn't affect the quality of the show either way.
Actually, probably improve it. But anyway,
Asparagus.
Okay, let's see. Panel intros. Who we got with us today here? Get rid of the chat. Let's see. Upper left-hand corner, we got Marco.
What? Me? Oh, hello.
You're
Okay.
in the first square today.
Yay, I'm number one. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Next up, yours truly. Next over, L. Curtis Boyle.
hello, everyone. Welcome to the show.
And last on the top row, Rick Euland. I guess that was a hello.
Or he's muted or something. I'm not sure what's going on.
He typed hello.
to me.
All right, let's see. Blind feed, carriage return. Jason Reichard.
Hello.
Oh, there's your hello. Came over the chat.
Yeah, there it is. Everyone's just the whole panel's just gonna type their responses today.
All right, next over, we got Ron Delvo.
Hi, it's W. Ron Delvo. How you doing?
W. Ron, okay. And Frank will introduce in a minute. Next up on the row, Grant Leedy.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
It's the last guy you want to come to town. Well, because when he comes to town, the tornadoes are following him.
Yep.
Let's see. Everybody, people shifted on me. Next up, Alan. Alan Paradise. And last on the bottom row, David Ladd.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show where we've got a nice interview scheduled for you today. I hope you're ready for today's events. Let's roll into it.
And he who snuck in on me at the last second, Slippy.
He's been here.
Oh, is that what I'm supposed to do? Type my response on an MC10.
On an MG10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the screen shifted.
I'm ready now.
Welcome
Me,
to her.
I'd have to grab a Sinclair, so.
I got one. Right here.
Okay, let's see. Well, that's it for panel intros. We have a special guest, Frank Linhares from Retro Rewind, and we'll get into our interview here in a bit.
Yeah, we've had him on before. This is going to be a more extended interview because we just kind of touched on Retro Rewind, the company he runs and sells things like CoCo STCs and Amiga stuff and General Commodore stuff, all kinds of things. But we're going to get more into his history in media and podcasting and a bunch of other things that we didn't cover last time. And to introduce that, I'm actually going to play a 7-minute clip from one of the shows he was on. I'm sure some of you will recognize some of the people involved. And there's some pretty cool, interesting stories, which I think Frank will comment on afterwards.
Okay.
Welcome back to the lab. I'm Leo Laporte. Our good friend Frank Linhares is here. He is, of course, the Tech File guy from the Tech File podcast, techfile.ca.
Thanks for having me.
And apparently doesn't mind taking modified Altoid tins, batteries, and mysterious circuitry through airport security.
Yes, it's a very interesting story on the way here. I got locked up for an hour and a half.
Oh, that's not so bad.
Through security and Pearson with dogs and everything. They couldn't figure out.
They sniffed it?
Yeah,
they were looking for explosives.
That's right.
Well, it looks a little bit like a homemade bomb. So this would be a first warning is if you're going to make this, don't take it on a plane.
Yeah, even though I checked it through my luggage, I wasn't stupid enough to bring it directly on the plane. They still had a serious problem.
Yeah, well, they'll find it, sure.
It's staying here. I'm not taking it back with me.
No, we'll keep it for you.
You guys can keep it.
We'll keep it.
I'll build another one when I get
and
home.
whatever you do, don't mail this anywhere.
Yeah,
they'll put it in a parking lot and blow it up.
That's right.
Yeah, it'll be on it. So what is this that we're making?
This is a USB charger using only 2 AA batteries. Now, I can't take credit for this design. Originally, this was designed by the guys at Make Magazine.
Oh, they do some neat stuff. That's a fun magazine.
They do some really cool stuff. But the problem is you can't really make the board that they had at home because it's double-sided. And if you're going to do this type of thing at home where you're going to etch your own board,
you got to use a breadboard kind of stuff you'd buy at hobby shops, right?
Yeah, that's right. A single-sided breadboard, you can do it at home. And that's what I did. I kind of modified the design so that you can do this at home with a single-sided board. Cost about $7 in parts that you can order. Including the tin and the batteries.
Looks like a couple of capacitors, a couple of resistors, 3 resistors.
Well, the key thing is the Max 756 boost controller.
That's the key. That little chip is a USB controller? What is it?
No, what it does is it actually takes 3 volts and regulates it to 5 volts.
In that little package?
That's right, in that little package. That's
Boy,
right.
is that amazing.
Yeah, it's actually pretty neat what it does. So there are other ones that are simpler out there using 9-volt batteries, but you lose a lot of power. A lot of function because you're dissipating the extra 4 volts and the 9 volt through heat. So this is a much more efficient way. You can actually get almost 2 complete charges on an iPod video.
All the way up?
All the way up.
From 2 batteries?
From 2 AA batteries.
That actually is remarkable.
Yeah, it's quite neat. And I
didn't realize
it to have dual ports, so you can charge 2 devices at the exact same time.
You are good. Yeah. So we've actually much improved on the original design. I think. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this I didn't know this. So these batteries are putting out 3 volts.
That's right.
2 of them. And the USB spec says it should be 5 volts.
That's right,
coming
5
out
volts.
Of it. Okay. Show us whatever we need to know. I mean, obviously, these circuit designs will be on the website.
They'll be on the website.
This is for somebody who's done Heath kits or any kind of, I mean, it's not a complicated one, but you have to use a soldering iron.
No, it's not. And actually, up on the Tech File website, I have a complete video, a complete how-to, step-by-step, how to iron it on and how to use the etching solution, how to do everything.
What are you ironing on there?
I'm ironing on the print of the board that comes off the software.
Oh, so the board itself has some layout on it.
Well, yeah, you iron it on, and as you can see in the video, you run, you take the circuit board, you drop it in etching solution, and the purpose of the etching solution, it'll dissolve away all the copper except where the black lines are, which leaves you with the traces on the bottom of the board.
So in effect, you know, where I would have, when I was doing Heath kits, actually had wires there.
That's right.
You're actually putting copper on the board.
That's
and
right.
That replaces the wires.
That's correct.
You could do with wires.
You could do with wires, but you'd probably never be able to fit it in such a small can.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I had never thought about doing that.
Yeah, I'll
That's
never,
very cool.
never run out of juice on any of my, my devices as well.
All right, so there you've etched it, and you've got it in the solution.
That's right. You wash the solution off. You're going to cut the board with a pair of scissors, drill through the board with a very small drill bit, like a number 63 bit. You can find all this stuff in electronic shop.
Nothing fancy here.
Nothing fancy. You can order it all through DigiKey.
By the way, you can buy these. I just want to point out, probably for less than you spent on this thing. I mean, you can buy these for around $40 or $50.
That's right, but I spent about $8.
Okay, all right. So you saved $32,
that's right,
ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly.
All right.
But yeah, it takes all the fun out of building.
I know, this is the whole idea. You know, what a great project if you wanted to do something with your kids to turn them onto electronics.
That's right. You have to be careful, though, with the etching solution. You got to be very careful. It's very dangerous. Yeah, it'll eat right through your skin.
tin or any of your. Here's all the parts you need. You got the Altoids tin, although I guess any tin will do. This is just
any
the right
tin will
size.
do. Any tin will do. You got a bunch of capacitors, a bunch of resistors, and the Max 756 boost controller. I mean, that's the key right there. And once you get all that going and you pop a set of batteries in, you just take any USB device you want.
And you just plug it right in there.
You just plug it.
I didn't realize that you could, with 2 AA's, you could really, that's a lot of juice in there.
And
it's charging up.
Eventually you'll see.
Any minute now, you're going to see
batteries might be dead on that unit. Let's try this one.
He's used them all up.
Or the,
Is it charging?
Yeah, it's charging.
Look, so you can see the little charge icon there on the app iPod. That's right. That's very neat.
Yeah, it's pretty. I have all the files. We'll have them all up on the website.
It's too bad you can't carry this on a plane.
Yeah, it is.
Because
that's where the $40 model. The $40 model would be a lot better.
Because they look at that and they go, "Oh, that's safe."
That's right. This is not a bunch of hot glue and components and dog sniffing.
Doesn't weigh a whole.
Yeah, it doesn't weigh.
I feel really bad.
No, that's okay.
You must have anticipated that a little bit.
No. Yeah, a little bit. I didn't think that they were going to go through the entire hassle bringing dogs.
They strip search you?
No comment.
Really?
Yeah. No comment. No.
Wow.
No comment. I'm not at liberty to discuss it.
It is because actually you look like a hoodlum.
Yeah.
So it could have
probably what it is. Yeah. Well, that and all the electronics and batteries, And
no, they would have done that to anybody. They would have done that to anybody. And I don't blame them. I mean, look at that. That could be anything.
Yeah, it was more entertaining than anything else, to be honest with you. I knew
they weren't hostile.
No, they weren't hostile.
You said, look, I'm about to do a TV show, and I've invented this little thing. Look, here's the book. Here's my website.
I actually got one of them to give me his cell phone and charge the cell phone.
Well, that should prove it. It works.
That's how I got out of that.
Would a bomb charge a cell phone? I think not. Not unless you were really a good designer.
That's right. Yeah, I hope not.
Yeah. So all of this is on techfile.ca. You can watch the video. We have the links, of course, on our website, labwithleo.com. You've even got the schematics and everything.
All the files is a complete how-to, a step-by-step how-to.
You took the beginnings of it and you made it work. You made it your own.
That's right. Made it easy to build at home, essentially, is what it was.
Yeah, I love it. That's really cool.
It's all yours. You can take it back on the plane.
Okay, shall I? I'll take both of them.
Take them both.
And I'll make sure that I don't have any batteries so it won't do anything. Yeah. That'll really help.
It might still confuse them, to be honest with you.
Frank Linhares is online at techfile.ca and is one of our great friends. It's so nice to see you. Thanks for coming all the way out here from Toronto. And watch out for him next time you're at Pearson. He could be in trouble. All right, when we come back, we're going to have more of your calls. But first, let's play What's the Tech? This is a close-up picture of something.
All right, I'll skip that little tail end there, but I think that kind of gives you guys an idea what the show was like. And Frank, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about your experience with airport security there.
Yeah, so that was definitely one to remember. I decided at that point in time I was going to check the device instead of physically bringing it on the plane with me. Sitting at the gate, I could hear them. My name being paged to the airport to pick up a courtesy phone. And I thought, oh, that's odd. First, I thought maybe something had happened back home. And I picked up one of the courtesy phones by the gate and they asked me to come to a room. There was a problem with my bag. And when I walked in, there were 4 police officers and every item of my luggage laid out. And the first guy had a picture of an x-ray in his hand. And he literally said to me, "What the F is that?" And at that point, my stomach kind of sank into my ankles. And I went, "It's a charger?" He goes, "Yeah." "What does it look like to you?" I says, "A bomb?" He goes, "Yeah, that's what it looks like to us too." You've stopped every plane on the runway because of this. And it was an interesting experience after a lot of explanation and a lot of being told off was the best way to describe it. Eventually got on the plane, but I've had problems getting on planes ever since. Let's just put it that way. You got a whole bunch of hot glue in a blob of hot glue and a bunch of batteries in a small case. Of course, through an x-ray, it's going to look like it's something that it shouldn't be. But yeah, I did actually, plug my iPod and see, look, all it is just a charger. That's literally all it is.
Did you ever think of saying the word bang?
No, at that point in time, I really thought, oh, great, I'm going to Gitmo. They're going to drag me off to Gitmo, and that's it. Because that was a surreal experience. And you walk in a room, and there's that many police officers just staring at you, very, very pissed off. You become a little kid. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. There's nothing to it, really."
And did they actually bring the dogs in and stuff like you were mentioning?
They did. Well, there was a dog in the room who had sniffed everything before they opened the bag. And then I was told next time, actually bring it on the plane with you. You can show security and explain right off the bat. And, I thought the opposite, but lesson learned.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome again, Frank.
Thanks for having me. It's a perfect intro. Frank stopped all traffic at Pearson Airport.
Yeah, that takes some doing.
Yeah, well, yeah, I seem to have a knack for that. Let's just put it that way.
Achievement unlocked.
What was that? Sorry.
Have you done it more than once? Stopped traffic at the airport with?
No, once is plenty. And like I said, I've had, no word of a lie, I've had issues every time I get on a plane since then. I'm sure that there's some record somewhere, some flag still set, because there was even talk of, the airlines can sue you for the delay and all this stuff. And I thought, oh, great. Thankfully, none of that happened. But I do remember specifically getting on the plane after all this, and everyone had already been sitting on the plane for about an hour and 20 minutes. And so you do that that Green Mile walk where very well everyone knows that you're the reason that the flight's been delayed for an hour and 20 minutes because all of a sudden you mysteriously are getting on the plane and then the plane takes off. So that was an interesting and humiliating and humbling experience.
Well, you had one thing going for you. You speak English.
Yeah, I mean,
this wasn't too long after 9/11, just a few years after.
No,
so
it was a few years. Yeah, it was a few years afterwards, and that's, I think, the height of security. And I really had that just stomach sinking feeling when I walked in that room that my family would never see me again. That was it. But thankfully, I did get on the plane, and they allowed me to take it. And it didn't come back with me. It stayed in Vancouver. I was like, it ain't coming back with me. I'll just build another one.
Yeah, well, especially if it was only $8.
Yeah, I mean.
So just a little bit of a recap, I guess, because we have interviewed you before, but we just basically concentrate on your very early history with computers and then jump straight into Retro Rewind. So for the people who have not seen that previous interview, a standard question we ask all of our guests, of course, is what was the first computer ever used? What was the first computer you ever owned?
First computer I ever used was, I think they were called Icons, and they were kind of really, they were a Canadian brand that was an education brand that the school board here in Toronto had purchased. God, I'd love to get my hands on one, but they're near impossible to find. And the very first computer I owned was a CoCo 2. I remember specifically, going with my dad to Radio Shack at Dufferin Mall in Toronto and picking up the CoCo 2 and the tape deck for it, the 81, I think it was, if I remember correctly. And that was the very first machine I used, owned, and played with, and it was it brings back incredible memories.
And your gateway drug.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Do you still have it?
I don't have that original one because, unfortunately, probably not very popular on this show. But in order to get a 64, we had to sell the CoCo 2. But since then, I own a lot of CoCo 2s and CoCo 1s and CoCo 3s and MT10s. So I have, including the tape deck, I've rebuilt what I had, but unfortunately, I don't have the first original CoCo 2 that I owned.
Yeah, I don't have my original CoCo 1 either. In one of my moves, it fell when the moving truck and actually cracked the circuit board in half. So,
yeah, but I've filled that hole again a few times over.
We got a comment from Wayland in the chat I thought was kind of funny. He said the moral of the story with the bomb stuff is that you make your bomb in a phone charger.
Yeah. I had this weird run. There's a few other segments I did on the show where I would jam USB ports into all sorts of stuff. There's one where I jammed it into our alarm clock so that I could charge my iPod at night. And I just had this thing for just putting USB ports in things that shouldn't really have USB ports.
That was one of the ones actually that was one of the finals. So I was planning on playing as a preview. And actually, I think the funniest part of that story is that you guys were joking that it was your wife's alarm clock and she wasn't going to be able to wake up for work that morning.
Yeah, that was the alarm clock right out of her bedroom. That I was like, I'm taking this with me. I'll be back in 4 days.
And nowadays they put USB ports in about everything.
Yeah, lamps, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I had it I had one in my bike. I put them everywhere, wherever I could. It just made sense, right? Started to most devices started to show that they could be charged via USB 5 volts. So why not just have that convenience of plugging stuff in, charging it no matter where you are.
Yeah. So in your earliest days with the CoCo 2 and then with the Commodore 64, were you in it for the software at that time, or were you already into the hardware stuff at that point?
So I led very misspent youth. I ran a BBS for a very, very long time. I ran a BBS up until about 3 years ago. I'm sure there's a statute of limitations on this, but I was a bit of a pirate, let's just put it that way, with a few different
we're shocked
organizations in the Commodore 64 world that were fairly large, that will remain nameless just in case there is no statute of limitations on this stuff. But it was mostly 64 was mostly programming, to be honest with you. And then the BBS, I think it was like 2016 when I finally shut the last BBS I ran. I mean, it was like part of FidoNet since like 87, part of FidoNet's administration for the past, I don't know, 20 years. So that was always my thing. And I always kind of, whenever I had an itch to scratch, I would just kind of make stuff myself for it, as much as I could, more of a way to prove to myself that I could do it. But that was my bread and butter in the retro computer days.
So the hardware you just kind of did as a hobby when needed, and then when did it start becoming your thing? Like you did a lot of hardware stuff like on the lab, and then of course with Retro Rewind, et cetera. So
yeah, so I mean, kind of engineer by trade. So some people would say I was just cheap. I was like, hey, if I can build it myself, I'm going to build it myself. To hell with this. I'm not going to. If I don't have to spend $200 on something, I'm going to do it myself. And then there were always like oddities that, I wanted that you couldn't buy. Like I had a user port device that would offer a reset for the Commodore 64. And, the way my desk was positioned, I didn't really have a lot of space to constantly stack stuff. So I kind of said, nobody's got like a right angle adapter. So I'm just going to make one. And that's kind of where the whole hardware thing started, to be honest with you. It was just scratching itches more than anything. It's like, I really wish that I could have this and nobody seems to make it. So to hell with it. Let me see if I can figure it out myself. And then that kind of just steamrolled, to be honest with you. I met a gentleman by the name of Andy Walker, who's a Canadian tech journalist. And that kind of was the door opening to meeting people like Leo and everyone else that I did and working on the show. Was trying to just show that problem with shows like The Lab and Call for Help is there's a lot of soccer moms that would call in, a lot of people that would call in with, basic tech problems, and they wanted to expand the show and to kind of bring more geeks in, I guess would be the best way to describe it. So that was one of the tasks I had is, let's do some light hardware hacking. Some of the segments got a bit complicated for the show audience, I'll be honest, but let's try to show people that there's more than just, AOL mail when it comes to computers.
How to install a printer and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or why I can't default my printer to double-sided type of thing. And that's where that whole thing kind of snowballed.
Now, had you been watching Leo's shows before that? Like how?
Yeah, I mean, I did. The original Tech TV, the screensavers, essentially, really. Being in Canada, we initially didn't have the screensavers, but there was always nefarious ways of obtaining it. But so, yeah, it was always an interest to me. I'd known of Leo for quite a while, right back from his DevNull days on MSNBC. Never had a chance to meet him until, I got in contact with everyone through Andy, essentially, who became one of the co-hosts later on in Call for Help, and Amber and everyone else. So, I knew of him, of course, and kind of did follow him loosely. But it wasn't until, meeting Andy and being asked to come on and do, I think like, I don't know, I did like the very first segment I think I did was like something around Myth TV, which was like a kind of home theater PC software back long time ago. Some of you might remember Myth TV. And that's kind of how it all started, right? So yeah, I mean, that's a long ass answer to a simple question of, did I know Leo? But yeah, that's kind of how I got to know everyone there.
Well, I guess the one thing, like you obviously had some software chops from back in the Commodore 64 days, and you did a lot of, like, I'm assuming most of the hardware was self-taught. Did you take up any official training for?
I'm an engineer by trade, so sort of, okay. Yes.
Okay. But like, what did Andy see in you that thought that you would be good on camera? Because that's a big jump in a totally different skill set.
You know what? I think they were just, to be honest with you, they think they were just hungry for segments when they moved the show up more than anything. It was he said, hey, I'll mention it to the show producer. And then, I got an email probably a couple weeks later from the show producer saying, what type of stuff can you do? And I said, well, these are the projects I'm currently working on. I don't mind talking about any of them. And that's kind of just how it happened. It was nerve-wracking in the beginning because it's a whole other thing walking into a TV studio where, makeup is literally covering you in this cake material and, they're restyling your hair and you're all, hooking you up to all these wires and, IFBs in your ear so that the director can talk to you and, tell you that, turn 20 degrees more this way or 20 degrees more that way. So, and that becomes a bit confusing. Like my very first segment, if you ever watch it, I'll see if I can find it. I think I've got it somewhere. I mean, I look like a buffoon out there. I'm not used to having someone talk in my ear and tell me, keep your arms down, move more to the left, move more to the right. So I thought, oh, great, I'll never be invited again. But then I got an email from Leo saying that was fantastic. Can you put together more of that type of stuff, that kind of light hardware hacking, that, simple tasks for people. And then I just kept doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And I was on it for years.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the fact that, like you said, you mentioned that you were kind of getting, some of the segments were getting a bit more complicated, and you had a couple podcasts at the same time too. And one was a bit more of the light stuff. And then you also had another one that was a bit more of the heavy duty. Actually, how many podcasts did you end up doing? Because you had Digital Underground TV, which is a video podcast. You had Technocrat, which was more the hardware hackers, but more audio. You had an interview show or something.
Tech File, which was the interview show. Yeah. And that was, to be honest with you, that was my favorite one, was the interview show. Because you really got to, it was unheard of at that time. It was kind of, podcasting was still fairly new. I think, really in its infancy. I mean, we're talking 2004.
2004 to 2007 seems to be when they all started.
Yeah, so I think I started Tech File 2004, and it was literally, after starting to do Call for Help, it was literally like, I think the very first episode I interviewed was Leo in his hotel room here in Toronto, and then and he actually opened the door. He was like, "Oh, great! Here, I'll contact Patrick Norton and John C. Dvorak and a whole bunch of people that he opened doors for," and having the ability to sit with these people that, I don't want to say you looked up to, but you respected in the industry, was fantastic to have this kind of unfiltered, unplugged kind of, nobody wanted the questions ahead of time. It was literally just, sitting for 45 minutes to an hour, just chatting, just kind of shooting the breeze with people and getting to know them. And that took off like a wild horse, that show. And it was fantastic and something I'm very proud of.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I've been trying to, and Ron DeVos helped quite a bit with these too, is setting up interviews here, is you want to capture that history before it's too late. Either people forget or, badly, some people pass away type thing, especially if they pass away at a younger age. I mean, you want to try to get that background story and then have it, preserved for posterity. So I didn't actually listen to that show. When I got first in the podcast was a bit later. It was probably 2007, 8. And I was basically like Leo with some of the stuff that he was doing, and then CNET and a few others too, Revision 3, some of the other ones like that too. But and then as far as friendship stuff go, like Amber MacArthur, Kevin Rose. I mean, Amber did Command N. Now she's interviewing the Prime Minister of Canada and stuff, and working on CTV. Kevin, of course, started Dig and the Dig Nation podcast and Revision 3 and Milk and a whole bunch of other things I can't even remember. So did you meet them all through the TV shows, or did you meet some of them from Leo passing interviews to you, or how did some of those friendships happen?
Most of those people was just from being on the TV show. Amber, I became really good friends with. Amber and Andy were probably the two people that I became the closest with. But then, I got to meet Kevin. Kevin would fly up and do shows. So I formed an incredible friendship with him, with Patrick. Let's see, Alex Lindsay, who still to this day is an incredibly good friend of mine. It opened a lot of doors and it created a lot of friendships that have lasted a very, very long time. And I think it was all from that kind of ecosystem of being in it, to be perfectly honest with you, because you met most of these people I met on set. And the nature of how we shot the show, for those that don't know, the show would air every weekday, depending on the time zone you're in. At least here in the Eastern time zone, it would air at 6 p.m. on Tech TV. But we would shoot an entire month's worth of shows in 4 days, which is a hectic schedule when you're trying to do 20 shows in 4 days. So, you'd wait for your opportunity to sit there. Oh God, look at that baby face. You would sit there and wait for your opportunity. So you'd kind of be in the green room with these people for hours at a time, right? So you got to know them, you got, chatting, and those kind of friendships developed and carried on. And, I'm very proud of what Amber has accomplished, because she's really, her career has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she was doing a tech. I can't remember who she was co-hosting with, but on CTV, one of our national networks here.
Yep.
She was co-hosting that one for a while, and then she started getting involved with some of the political figures way up, like prime minister.
Yeah, and she used to do CP24 too, which is like an all news station. She used to do a segment there. I think it was called Homepage. I was on there a few times with her, which was quite interesting. But she's always dabbled in a whole bunch of stuff, and now she's very in demand everywhere she goes, which is incredible.
Yeah. And she still does like Facebook live streams and stuff.
She does, yeah. Yep.
I got a question for you, Frank.
Sure.
Yeah, you had these shows, did you ever meet the guy, or anything ever happen, like that guy that keeps zapping him stuff when he's doing his shows? You didn't have.
Are you talking about the professor out in Alberta? What's his name?
Yeah.
No, I never met him. I do love watching him though. He's an electronics professor at one of the universities in Alberta.
Really?
I can't remember. Yeah, he just does it for comedic value. But you actually do take some lessons away from what's this show? Is it Kaboom or something like that?
Electro Boom.
Something like that. Electro Boom. Thank you. Never met him in person, but I think he'd be a fantastic guy to sit down and share a beer with.
Yeah. Anyway, one of the reasons I picked this particular picture, besides the fact it has you interviewing Leo, is actually you've got your Tech File t-shirt on.
Yep. Yeah, I do. That was Leo decided, hey, it would be great if we had kind of a meetup type of thing here in Toronto for the fans. We just kind of mentioned it through, even back then social media was, sorry, you just distracted. Oh my God. That's a lot of faces. So if you kind of want me to quickly go through the people that are here, sure. I'm sitting down far right. It's hard to see me, but in the kind of, exactly right there. Next to me, for those of you who are Canadian, that's a gentleman by the name of Alan Cross. So Alan Cross is the host of a syndicated radio show called The History of New Music. And he's also, I think right now he's chief of the Chorus Music Network. He's just a huge music buff who secretly is a nerd, and emailed me completely out of the blue saying, hey, can I come? I'd love to meet all you guys. And I thought it was a joke initially. I was like, Alan Cross, yeah, right. Next to him, I think, is Dan, Kevin's friend. And then there's, God, I forget his name. He was on Attack of the Show with Kevin. He's
Alex.
Alex, thank you. Kevin across from him, Amber, Leo, and Andy Walker. And we decided to record a show at that meetup, which ended up having 700 people show up. People kind of flew in from all over. We were kind of taken aback that all these people actually cared and even knew who the hell we were. which is quite shocking. But that was a fun evening. That definitely was a fun evening.
So where was the event held? Like, you were the main organizer of this whole thing, weren't you?
Well, yeah, somehow I got saddled with it. I'm not sure how that happened, but it was like, okay, I'll take that lead. It was at a restaurant here in Toronto called No Regrets. And it was just, Amber happened to live close to it. She was there all the time. She knew the owner. So me and her went over and talked to him, and he's like, sure, we'll book the whole venue for you guys this one kind of weekday evening. And we thought, oh, great, no one's really going to show up. But wow, a lot of people did show up, which was a humbling experience.
Now, did you know Leo when he was in his home? Before.
Yes, before he bought the studio. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going back to the call for help days. So
yeah.
I think the first episode I was on was probably Josh wasn't born. So Josh is 16. So it was probably about 18 years ago. It was the first time I met him. Wow, I'm really showing my age. How's that
I want to show this one because it's got better
22.
pictures of Kevin and Amber here. So
yeah, Kevin and Amber and Andy and Dan beside him. That was a fantastic evening.
Yeah, I actually found a bit of a video clip from it too here. I don't know how much we'll
Oh, God. Was I drunk? Oh, no. Should I prepare myself?
I'll turn down a bit here so you can talk over if you want to comment.
Yeah, no regrets. I was right. I was like, God, I hope that's what it's called. Yeah, so like literally all these people just showed up, which was mind-blowing.
It looks like you were actually running some of the tech in the background for us.
Well, the interviews were for the Tech File podcast, right? So it was, it just organically grew.
Rock. A year ago, it's almost been exactly a year ago that G4 Tech TV Canada called.
Wow, who is that young, ugly-looking guy there?
Call for help in the U.S. Well, you have some fans in Canada. Would you like to do the show up here? And I said, are you kidding me? You got it. I came up here, and we've been doing the show a year. Yesterday, we completed our 200th episode. And it's just been growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we're in Australia, and it's been huge there. And I think any day now we're going to see it in countries all over the world, maybe even south of the 49th parallel. But all I care about right now is Canada. You have been wonderful. So thank you very much. Now, I want to introduce some people because there's more than just Amber, Andy, and Leo here. The Call for Help crew is here. Andy, ladies and gentlemen, Andy Walker, cyberwalker.com. Mike Zazazazazazara, who is an up-and-coming young star. It's everything we can do to keep him from taking his clothes off on the set. You think we're joking? He owns nakedmike.com. And, of course, the real star of Call for Help, ladies and gentlemen, Amber MacArthur. She came up to me earlier and she said, people like us. And I said, they like us. They like us a lot. It's if you do something that treats people as intelligent, as people who are interested, who want to learn, if you don't talk down to them, yeah, they like you. I don't know why network executives have such a hard time learning that lesson. There's a lot of places where people would say, look at this and go, well, what is that show? We should be doing that show. Unfortunately, none of them are in the U.S. And also I want to introduce very important parts of the show is Sean Carruthers, our gadget guy. Frank Linhares from techfile.ca. He's the guy who put this all together. Let's thank him for arranging this. And he attempted to do a podcast. What a mistake that was. You got to do something. You just release it the way it is. Sometimes I do that with Twitter. I just give up and I say, here, take it. It's not getting any better. You should just release it. He's got like 8 tracks of everybody talking at once. And
yeah, that was a challenge.
Surprises here. I'm really pleased we could get them here. From south of the border, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Rose, and with him, his co-host from the Screensavers Indignation, Alex Albrecht.
There definitely was a lot of alcohol consumed that night.
It's Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had stronger beer.
Yeah. But you can see there's a lot of people that showed up. It was Leo really is in his element in these type of events.
Yeah. So were you busy like doing, mic checks and balancing mic stuff rather than actually being able to mingle?
It was a challenge. I did release it. It took a few months of trying to piece it all together, and but I did release it because I don't know what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, let's just have 12 people sitting in a room with 600 people watching. We'll pull this off. It didn't quite work that way. I think this is Kevin buying the entire room booze, which was very nice of him. He bought a round of drinks for everybody in the place.
Wow.
Which couldn't have been cheap.
So did this Tech TV meetup in Canada, this happen just the once in 2005, or did you do it a couple times?
We did it again in BC, if I remember correctly. But it was a little bit different. I think it was a 300th show kind of special, and Victor kind of pulled it all together. Victor Lucas, he's the one that kind of organized it and paid for everything. But it was more of a, bring the fans out. We've done 300 shows type of thing. Where this thing in Toronto was just organic. It was like, hey, we really should just invite a whole bunch of people to come hang out while we record this show. And then, this happened. And it was just like, wow, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people that showed up, which was fantastic. But I don't think we were prepared for it. Let's just put it that way.
Hey, I'll play the whole thing there. It's on YouTube if you want to catch it there.
I had no idea that this was on. I had no idea someone filmed this.
Yeah, it looks like it's just like a bunch of shots, kind of merged together to kind of give you a good feel of the event there. Plus, I'll stop before the embarrassing drunk stuff starts happening.
Yeah, please. I beg of you.
And then, as I mentioned before, you were on some other earlier podcasts. So Hack 5 is one with Darren that's still going today.
Yep. Flew to Virginia to hang out with the guys there. And we did, I think there was a Tech File episode 2, kind of did two things at once, kind of two birds with one stone. But they're fantastic. Those guys are just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Well, one thing I only started watching Hack 5 like years after this episode 6. I'll show the first bit here because you guys did comedy bits. But it was surprising to see how much Darren advanced of being on the camera, because in this one he's a little bit stilted, and like I probably won't play the whole episode, but you can definitely tell he's still getting familiar with the camera and how to do it. Now, you were mentioning you had to go through the same thing too here, but
I think everyone
he's a
does.
natural on it now.
Yeah, you kind of get used to it, right? I mean, your cues and segments, but in the beginning, a professional production environment is a whole other world, right? When you literally you've at all times have someone talking to you in your ear, whether it be the sound engineer or the director or the producer. And, you kind of, in the beginning, it's like, some of the earlier episodes I did, I kind of had this deer caught in a headlight look staring into the camera. And it wasn't because I was like, off or nervous. It's because I'm trying to understand what they're telling me in my ear to do. And then it just becomes second nature, right? So it does take it, like, there's no training. You got to be tossed into the fire and kind of get used to it.
Okay, so I'll play a little bit of this one here. Now, before I do, though, I think some of the people on the panel here actually have watched Hack 5. I think Alan and maybe Rick and some others, the hardware people. You guys watch Hack 5?
I missed that one, unfortunately.
Okay. Because I know some people have mentioned Hack 5 before in the show. I'm just trying to remember who it was. So I know.
I'm one of the people that watches Hack 5 back when Darren Atkinson and crap, I can't think of
Wes Tobler and Jonathan Goldsboro, and there was one other guy that I can't remember.
Okay. Anyway, though, like I said, the one thing that surprised me here, because they didn't really do this later on when I had started watching it. And now, honestly, I don't have time to watch it regularly. I just catch it once in a while nowadays. But the comedy bits at the beginning, that was not something I was expecting to see. So I don't know how long that lasted. But you get to see some of Frank's acting skills here on this one.
Is that what we're calling it? All right.
Who cares about the stupid meetup anyway?
I'm done with you. I'm totally done with you. Oh, dude,
Frank, you all right?
what's going on?
Frank.
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 Whoa, whoa, whoa.
God.
Frank! Frank!
Shit.
John, Harris, get the kill. Hold on. Yo.
God. Somebody call an ambulance.
Harrison!
You all right?
Frank!
That's not Oscar worthy. I don't know what is.
Harrison, get your laptop. Frank, shit. Oh, dude, we're losing him.
I got it. Move out of the way.
Look out.
Quick. Wait, I need a copy of Nmap. Somebody give me a copy of Nmap, quick.
John.
On specially marked packages, a free copy of Nmap.
God, I'm regretting this interview.
The Google Career Certificate.
Jesus, I forgot all about that, to be perfectly honest with you.
Oh, did you?
And with 3 young kids at home,
Yeah, I did a little bit of
being
digging.
able to learn at my own pace was so important.
I didn't know you were in a Google commercial.
Yeah. We're talking about that offline here. I'm going to get that fixed here soon. Because the ad blockers I've got are just not working anymore.
Frank.
Oh, he's awake.
Wow, he's fast. He's good.
Dude, you all right?
Whoa.
Nothing that Nmap sweep won't fix.
Dude, yeah, I'm good, man. Hey, man, I ain't a drink.
All right, let's go get a drink. Where do you want to go?
Get a drink. There's no regrets, son.
No regrets is great, man. Let's go.
Let's go.
All right.
Anyway, I'll play the whole episode there because
So that actually, funny enough, that is the site of Call for Help in Toronto. I remember this now. This is so I actually introduced Leo to Darren and the rest of the Hack 5 crew and convinced them to allow them to come up on the set and do a segment. So that is actually what you're seeing is the set of Call for Help here in Toronto.
Okay, well, I'll let the video play here. So
yeah, that's the set.
No, here's you doing
I was like, you gotta meet these guys.
Laporte, and you may remember me from such shows as the Screensailers and Call for Help. Well, that's all over now. They're taking the place down and folding it up. Frankly, at 76 years old, I'm too old for this. Thank God Hack 5's here to take over. Kids, hit it.
Anyway.
God, you've done some digging. Wow. Jeez.
Yeah. And Darren had to be a hoot.
Yeah, he was. Well, he still is. I shouldn't say he was. He still is a hoot. And he's done very well for himself. So I'm quite happy for him.
Yeah, he actually ended up doing some commercial products. Like what's that one, Hack the Pineapple or whatever I think it was?
Yeah, they saw quite a few things. Yeah, the Wi-Fi Pineapple, and there's a few other the Ducky. There's a few other commercial
Land
products.
Turtle.
And, yeah, quite a few products that they saw.
Yeah, and I mean, for those who aren't familiar with the show, it's definitely more in the hardware hackery and network hackery in specific. I think it's
security.
Yeah,
big time into security.
And like you said, the hosting in the has gotten much better since these earliest days.
We're all embarrassed of our early stuff. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was a fun one because I didn't realize you were involved with that early on. So how did you meet Darren? Because he wasn't really part of the Leo group, I don't think, or was he on?
No, not at all. I think he just reached out once and commented on the Tech File podcast and how he loved it, and we kind of just got to know each other that way. And I told him that we were doing this meetup and that they should come up if they could. And then one thing led to another. Somehow I ended up in Virginia. Working with them on that episode, and then kind of convinced Leo that he should give them a kind of a chance and a crack at it, which was fantastic because they did come up and they did Call for Help a couple episodes with us, and the rest is history. Yeah,
and I know he guested a fair bit for a while there on Leo's podcast network.
He did, yeah, he did, yeah. He actually moved from Virginia to kind of Leo's neck of the woods, and I think that's where he still is right now.
Yeah. And this, I mean, obviously your old websites for Technocrat and stuff are not running anymore, but
Nope.
I did pull some Wayback Machine stuff here. So this is digitalunderground.tv in summer of 2007 here, just when you released episode 3. And unfortunately, the actual video's not archived. I can't play that. So
no, but I've
But
got
if you want
them
to just
somewhere.
explain kind of what Digital Underground TV, what the premise of that was, and maybe how long it ran, etc.
So it ran for quite a while. I think it ran until probably 2015, if I remember correctly. And I did this show with Mike, who was Leo introduced there. Mike was one of the producers on Call for Help. And we would just do it was just a general kind of tech show that talked about new and interesting things that we had stumbled upon, and focused a lot, if I remember correctly, on kind of the emergence of Web 2.0. It was more Mike's thing than mine. I was just kind of riding his coattails, let's put it that way, more than anything, but helping him out with it, helping him out with the production and whatnot. And that's God, I haven't seen that in a very long time either.
So did you stay on the show right up until the end then? Or?
Yeah, from the beginning right until the end, right until the very end, before we thought that was enough and kind of shut it down.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, some of the stuff that you did of the podcasting thing. Like, is it just because Retro Rewind got so busy at that point that you just didn't have time, or was there so many competing shows now that it just felt redundant?
Yeah,
or you guys were getting burned out?
I thought I'd done what I needed to do. I kind of scratched that itch right at the beginning. I always said, if I have an itch I want to scratch, I'm going to do so. And it was successful. I mean, TechFile ran for a lot longer. This is kind of an ancillary thing. Digital Underground and Technocrat, the other one. But TechFile was the main focus, and we did that. I mean, TechFile was a monthly show, and I think we did, 85 episodes, something like that, 75 episodes. And it was more of okay, you know what, I've done what I needed to do. I don't want to kind of drag this thing on like some shows do. And it was just time to put it to bed. And, my kids started getting older. And frankly, my family life. Yeah. And my family is very important to me. They'll always be first at the end of the day. And that was that. My kids started getting heavily into baseball, and I ended up coaching him, and that took a lot of my time. And he still plays, high competitive level baseball at his age, at 16. Hopefully he gets a scholarship, and it's going to save me a ton of money, but it's a whole other conversation. So, I mean, it just, life got in the way, and I mean, I don't regret it. I look back and I thought we did quite well, and I enjoyed my time doing all this stuff.
So you're not doing any regular podcasts except for guesting every once in a while here.
Nope. Yeah, no, my focus now is clearly on Retro Rewind. And, it's actually, my wife is like, for the love of God, why can't you just make some money off this stuff? You've got crap everywhere. Like you've got an insane amount of money invested in all this crap. And that was, again, it's always been, I always go back to scratching that itch. And it's like, well, if I'm scratching this itch, then there's got to be people out there that need an itch scratch too. So let's do that. So I started, Retro Rewind, I don't know, 2.5 years ago now, something like that. And that's
you've been running that out of your house. Now, when we went to Boat Fest together, you had mentioned that you were looking at getting an actual office space because you were kind of outgrowing your house and garage at that point.
Correct. And we
is there anything further on that, or?
Yeah. So the problem is I need to find something that is relatively close to where I live. And, everything we've looked at has either been way too big for our needs or way too small. And it's unfortunately a waiting game. So we do have the services of a real estate agent who's constantly looking to make sure it meets the criteria we need.
Thank you. Yes, you're too kind.
And when something finally does, wow, that's scary. When something finally does show up, we're going to jump on it, because my entire basement needs to go back to my family. Just put it that way.
Yeah.
And my garage and my shed and everything else, because there's stuff everywhere. Like the garage has got, 2 pick and place machines and ovens. And the basement is like my daughter's old bedroom, because, she's now 24 and has her own life, has been, it's nothing but shelves of stuff and parts and components. And, the old family room is now a shipping area. So we really do desperately need to, but we've got to find the right space first.
So did Retro Rewind, like, were you planning on making it like a full-time business like it's become, or was that meant to be more of a hobby thing you're just going to do to
started as a hobby, to be honest with you, and it's taken off like a rocket, and I can do nothing more than hold on for dear life and try to keep up with demands. And initially it was just supposed to be a hobby, and it's completely outgrown that. I mean, we have 4 people now, some part-time, some full-time, that work for us.
One of them was in the chat earlier, Jason Warrens, who's out of Calgary,
Jason,
I believe.
Yep, Jason, who thankfully he takes a lot of will take a lot of overflow on at least some of the recaps we have to do and some of the repairs, because it's getting silly. It's getting completely out of control. So we've got Jason, we've got Troy, and we've got Jamie, and this small little hobby is now kind of leapt into a business with 4 employees, which is fantastic and frightening all at the same time.
Was this the first time you've ever actually ran a business?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a learn as you go scenario. Let's just put it that way.
Just kind of like being on TV. It's just kind of like wing it, and you learn as you
wing
go.
it. Yeah. It's a little bit more difficult, especially when Revenue Canada comes knocking. But
I found that out when I started.
It's why you hire an accountant and a lawyer to kind of help guide you, because it went from a small little hobby to, it's like, wow, this really is gotten some legs.
So how did you meet some of the employees? Because like they're not all in your area, like some of them are scattered across Canada.
Yeah, so like Troy's in Ottawa. I've known Troy, 20 plus years through FidoNet. If I go back to BBSing, and Troy does a lot of the coding for us. A lot of any programming that needs to be done, he's kind of the guy that looks after that, including like our CoCo SDC diagnostic cart. He's the one that kind of disassembled the original code and made sure that it was properly patched for whatever amount of memory you happen to be running in your CoCo, not just the first 16K, and made some other changes to satisfy our needs. Jamie, who I've known also for 20 plus years, does a lot of customer service stuff, does a lot of troubleshooting. And Jason I met through the Amigos, to be honest with you. Through being a fan of the Amigos.
Yeah, because you got a pretty good team. I mean, I got to meet Jason in person because we actually, all drove down together when you picked us up at the airport in Toronto. And thanks again for sponsoring that. That was very, very kind.
Absolutely, it was a blast. Fantastic time. In
fact, it was during those conversations in the car that we discovered all this history of what you'd all done there, because you were kind of coy about it. When we had you first on, you didn't really mention it at all, to be honest. I mean, that I would have led with that. It was me. So I think you had mentioned that, I think I asked you as to why you had not used some of your, being somewhat famous in the tech community before with Retro Rewind. And I think you had said that you wanted Retro Rewind to be able to stand on its own. And it has, apparently that's worked if you're hiring employees and becoming a full-time business.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. And I'm going to be honest with you, the CoCo community has been incredible. At some points, rabid in the amount of stuff that they want. We went to this retro computer show here in Kitchener, I don't know, 3 weeks ago now, something like that. And there were a few diehard CoCo people there. And the CoCo products outsold the Commodore products like by leaps and bounds, which was mind blowing. Like, I just don't understand how many CoCos are still there that people still need SDCs. That still boggles my mind. Because I think we sold 13 of them within like 6 hours, which is like, whoa, what's happening here? I'm not complaining. This is a good problem to have, but like, where is all this coming from? So everything I've ever done, I've always wanted it to stand on its own merits, right? I didn't want to lead and start Retro Rewind and kind of wave a flag of saying, hey, this is me and this is what I've done in the past, because I don't think any of that past stuff has to do with Retro Rewind, to be perfectly honest with you, right? So I wanted it to kind of, if it was going to grow and be successful, then let it grow and be successful on its own merits, on, our workmanship, on our customer service, on that type of stuff. And I think we've done quite well. And I was a conversation that we had, I and Jason, driving down to Virginia, where it was like, I did all that stuff in the past, but to me, it has nothing to do with Retro Rewind or the work we do. I think it's kind of Retro Rewind has stood on its own merits, has nothing to do with, Frank in the past. It has to do with Frank right now. And now that we've kind of established ourselves, at least I think we have, I don't mind talking about anything I've done in the past, but really didn't want that to be.
Yeah, you didn't want to ride on your own coattails, basically.
No, absolutely not. I wanted it to be, they do good work. They're efficient. They're, great customer service, that type of stuff. And that's what I like to think we've done and kind of hope we've done.
And you sell internationally too. Obviously, you sell in North America, the States, and Canada. In fact, if
anywhere
I bring
in the
up prices
world
here, it'll be the Canadian prices because I'm, it registers me as Canadian. But you sell like tons of Amiga stuff to Europe and stuff too.
Oh, Europe. We've sold to every continent but Antarctica. I don't think anyone actually is there, but still, like Australia, South Africa, all over Europe, Asia, Thailand, China. We even sold stuff to China, which is mind-boggling.
So you're buying the parts from China and sending them back, basically?
And sending them back, yeah. Huge CoCo community in Brazil that I didn't know existed.
Yeah, they had the whole clone scene with the CP400 and a bunch of others too. So
yeah. So we've done a lot of business in Brazil and Argentina, and obviously Canada and the US, and all over Europe.
So Frank, are you going to run out of materials to keep making SDCs?
Well, so we were, and one of the things, the problem is, as you probably know, is the PLCC packages for the CPLDs, right? They haven't been made in years. PLCC really is a hobby component, and Xilinx, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, and then an end of life on the PLCC package, not on the actual TPLD itself, but on the package. And, we've decided it's just going to be easier. We've developed a small carrier board that, you can put a QFP Xilinx on that will just be pin compatible to the holes in the SDC. So just solder the carrier board directly onto the SDC instead of having a PLCC socket and dropping, because those PLC sockets are garbage. Let's be honest. You pull the chip out once or twice and that's it. The socket's done for. So a little carrier board we've developed. They actually came in, I think, on Wednesday. So I haven't had a chance to sit down and test them yet because I've taken the next 3 days off, knowing very well how long the show runs. But as soon as we're done, one of the first things I'm going to do is go play with the new carrier boards and make sure they work. Because I think right now, probably got 35 PLCC Xilinx left, and then we got to move to the new carrier boards.
Yeah, because you'd mentioned to me in private, how well you'd sold at that show in Waterloo, I think it was, wasn't it?
Kitchener, yeah.
Or Kitchener, sorry.
Yeah.
And then the fact that then you all of a sudden got some more orders online, and you'd already run out of stock from selling them at the show, so you had to stay up to like 3 a.m. that Friday, just jamming out boards and to get your stock
as quickly as possible. Yeah, as quickly as possible. But they're back, so we've got a workaround. Let's put it that way, until the next problem or next chip shortage hits on something else. Because even trying to get the Atmel chips has been a bit of a challenge. It's opened up a little bit, and at least Atmel has committed to continue on with the dip package of the 328p. But I don't think they're putting much effort into producing them.
There, another question.
Oh, go ahead.
Another question real quick. You're a Linux guy. Do you have a CoCo Pi?
Do not have a CoCo Pi. I am a Linux guy. You're 100% correct. I do not have a CoCo Pi. Not for not wanting one. It's just trying to find the time. Like, one of the things I love doing with these old computers is playing games. I don't think I played a game in a year and a half. I just don't have the time, unfortunately, with trying to keep the business going and the amount of repairs we have in. But it does look like a neat project.
Actually, the repair thing is something I think we should emphasize too, because we've shown some of your products here, like cap kits and the CoCo SDC, the diagnostic cartridge. And I know you've got some other stuff you're kind of working on, probably not ready to announce yet. But the repair thing is one.
There's more CoCo stuff coming soon. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. And I think one thing to mention is the fact that you do repairs on a whole plethora of machines here. So maybe go into that, like what type of repairs do you do? Like, obviously, if somebody's taking a welding torch to try to fix a soldering problem, you probably aren't going to fix that. But what kind of things do you fix on CoCo specifically, since you're on there?
You know what? We'll fix whatever if we can. Let's just put it that way. I know I got 2 CoCo 2s and a CoCo 3 that are on the bench right now that I got from someone at that show in Waterloo who had these 3 machines that just didn't work. You know, some of them are common problems. Like one of them is definitely the stupid PLCC socket on the gimme needs to be replaced. The other 2 I haven't diagnosed yet, but you know, if we can repair it, we will. Thankfully, we've got the tools and the facilities nearby. You know, there's a PCB manufacturing company local here that I've built a great relationship with that, you know, they will do x-rays of boards for me, which makes life so much easier when you're trying to track down, you know, traces and stuff like that. I mean, we've got the capability to, if we can fix it, we will. Generally people, you know, send us in the machine, will diagnose what the problem is, let them know what it's going to cost. And if they want to have it repaired, most of the stuff we get in, I'll be honest with you, is repairing other people's attempts at repairs. Let's put it that way. That's like 70% of the stuff that comes in is like, oh, I tried to remove the CIA on my Commodore 64 and, you know, I took like 7 traces out with it. It's like, all right, send it to us. We'll patch it up for you. But the other 30% are just honest. Hey, you know, my CoCo does nothing but give me a green screen now. You know, I've tried the basics of pushing all the chips back in and that's not working. So can you, you know, figure out what's wrong with it? And, you know, we'll just kind of go through the standard diagnostic procedures and get the scope out and figure out, you know, what signals are working, what aren't, and, you know, is it a chip? Is it a trace? Is it a socket? What is it? And then kind of take it from there.
Now, I know, like, we've had some other members in the community that have actually, like Pedro Pena being one example, who's actually been, you know, duplicating CoCo motherboards, but has no interest really on manufacturing or selling these types of things. Have you guys had any discussions on maybe making a commercial product at some point?
We have not, but I'm totally open to that because there's a lot of products we sell where we do the manufacturing based on, you know, someone else's creation.
CoCo SDC being one of them.
CoCo SDC being one of them, absolutely. Right. So we've got to deal with Darren to produce them. And we're always open to that when we've got the, you know, facilities and the equipment to do, you know, kind of smallish to medium runs of products. I mean, we could do, you know, a couple hundred at a time. And if people have products out there that they want to sell, I mean, we'll gladly partner with them. We do it with other people who develop products.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about you. Like a lot of the hobbyist manufacturers, you know, it's basically one-man shops, and you know, like Ed Snyder at ZiptoZone. I mean, he's a one-man shop, but he's got so many different products for the MC10 and the CoCos and stuff, and he always has to do these little rounds of doing a manufacturing of one, and then you might not see it again for 3 months. So if it's a hot seller like the CoCo SDC, it just disappears for a while. And you've got, you know, staff and more equipment and stuff that you can actually, you know, handle these runs and get them back up, you know, fairly quickly on inventory runs. So
yeah, we try to jig our production schedule based on sales numbers, and CoCo SDC I think is like the number 2 product right now. So it's constantly in stock, thankfully. And now that we've got that little carrier board, it should be constantly in stock for the foreseeable future. Because, man, I didn't know that there were that many CoCos out there. It's just like mind blowing how many people want this thing.
Now, one thing I'm hoping, I think David Ladd might have mentioned this too, is that we would really like to get you out at a CoCo Fest. So do you have any plans to attend that one here at the end of April?
I do. I mean, I was initially planning to attend the last time, and then, you know, life took a left-hand turn. And that's the problem with running a business, is sometimes life, you know, demands your attention. We had a bit of a family emergency in the past couple of weeks that has kind of dragged me off too, but we're back. And, yeah, no, I mean, I get a kick. I love going to cons, even if I'm just going to go and attend. But you've got a commitment that I will definitely be at the next one without question.
Yeah, and are you planning on doing the same thing like you did at Bowfest? You were just doing like live repairs and maybe do a seminar if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I'll gladly, sponsor a table and have stuff out there, and even if it's just to talk to the community, I'm down with that too. Anything that pulls me away from that stupid workbench every now and then is a good thing.
Because one thing I like, because you've had so much experience on TV and stuff, you're a really good presenter, and we saw that at Bowfest when you're going through like the worst repairs you've ever had to deal with and stuff. There, it's very fluid. It's much better than the stilted speech that I do when I try to do a seminar. So I think you doing a seminar would actually be an awesome thing to do there. And Grant, who's on the call here, is actually one of the people kind of in charge of that stuff. So you two should talk to each other, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've I've always had a saying that bull crap baffles brains. Let's put it that way. And I kind of just bull crap my way through everything I have to do. So yeah, I don't mind getting up and talking. I have no problem doing that. I did in the beginning, but that's one thing I've taken from being on TV. You just you don't think about it anymore, and you're talking to one person, whether there's 10 people in the room or 100, doesn't really matter. So I'll gladly help out in any way. And if there's a void that needs to be filled, sure, I'll gladly do it.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can arrange that. Hopefully there's no other emergencies at that time, because it would be great to have you down show.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely would love to. The CoCo community is incredible. I like the Commodore community too, but for those of you that are well aware of what the Commodore community is like, it can be kind of ugly at times, and you just shake your head and walk away. And it's one thing I haven't really seen in the CoCo community.
There's a bit, but I think it's less.
Oh yeah, it's nothing like especially the Amiga community. The 8-bit community, Commodore community is not like that. I mean, I've been a member of TPUG, which is the Toronto Pet Users Group, since I was like 12. So what's that? Like eight years? Because I am only 20 right now. I think it's the oldest Commodore users group in the world that is still actively run, meetings every month, World of Commodore in December every year. And you kind of don't see as much infighting in the 8-bit community as you do in the 16-bit community, which is a shame. Because at the end of the day, I joke about the Atari ST, but it's all in good fun. Those schoolyard fights are long gone. Because if we don't like band together and keep this hobby alive, it's going to die. And if we don't bring fresh blood into it, it's going to die.
Yeah, but it's just be Mac, Windows, and Linux, and that's it.
Yeah, the next generation, like I try to, my son's taking more and more of an interest in it. And because eventually we're all gonna go our ways, because that's human nature. And if there isn't something to keep it going, it's going to die, and that's a shame.
Yeah, got some comments in the chat here and some questions I wanted to get to here. So Tom Eric Gunderson, who I believe is in Europe somewhere, I can't remember which country specifically, says, I have a product suggestion for Frank: an adapter to connect an original CoCo or Dragon keyboard as well as 2 CoCo Dragon joysticks to USB, either combined in one package or 2 separate units.
You mean for like the CoCo Pi type of project thing, or for it to be used in an emulator?
That's a good question.
Or the other way around, using a USB.
Yeah, it looks more like the emulator from the way he's wording it here.
Yeah,
like to plug in the original. Like I do have one that Paul Shoemaker. Where did it put anything? He did one here that actually adapts. Like I've got this that I use when I'm playing MAME or VCC type thing. That just has the joystick type thing. But yeah, the keyboards and stuff here.
I mean, we've got the infrastructure for an Amiga one. So like we do sell a USB to Amiga joystick and mouse adapter. I mean, the infrastructure's there. It's really just changing the signaling around based on the joysticks. I think would be easy. The keyboard, I'm not really familiar with the kind of the matrix on the keyboard, but nothing a little bit of reading and testing and funny blue smoke being released couldn't fix.
Well, Paul Fiscarelli made a CoCo keyboard to USB. And that's what I use on my CoCo Pi.
Yeah, actually, that was Paul Fiscarelli. It's not Paul Shoemaker. I'm getting the two Pauls mixed up. A question from, or a comment, a question from my MMA Crossfire, and I don't know how much you know. Like, I don't know how much you kept track of the CoCo community after you switched to the C64. But he says, was Toronto and Greater Toronto area a strong CoCo market in the 80s and 90s? It seemed that way to me as a kid.
It was. It was probably second only to the Commodore, because I think a lot of it has to do with your kind of upbringing, right? So I talked about right at the beginning, we had these kind of single machines called icons, which I've never really seen anywhere outside of there was an Ontario company that developed them, and they solely developed them for the education market. And they ran like QNIX, and they were, big, massive honking things. Up until, I'm going to say up until maybe 84, 83, 84, where then the school board here and most school boards in Southern Ontario signed a deal with Commodore. So, you had a lot of the Commodore influence. I know that in other places, the Apple IIs were dominant in schools, and that built a community because, you got used to it, you had it, you played with it in school. So that's kind of why I went the Commodore route afterwards. But the CoCo community was fairly large here. I think only second to the Commodore community.
What were the processors in there? In
the Icon?
Yeah.
I think it was a Z80, if I remember correctly. I'd have to do some digging. It's like really hard. Like I've spent some time trying to find one just to kind of add it to my collection. They're very, very hard to find because they were really only sold to the education market, and because of the way the public school system in Canada works, at least in this province works, when they're done with the machines, they're not allowed to sell them, right? They have to destroy and recycle them. So there was a big push to buy all the pets in the C64s that came out of the Toronto school board when they eventually started moving to PCs, and they're not allowed to sell them.
What did they look like?
The Icons?
Yeah.
They kind of looked like pets, but were larger and had this big, weird trackball on the right-hand side. Is the best way to describe them. They're just big, massive honking metal boxes with monitors, like 12-inch monochrome monitors built in. I'll see if I can kind of find one, and if I can find a picture of it, I'll ask to share my screen. But they were they weren't very popular. Let's just put it that way, because they were only used kind of in school, and that was it.
Yeah, that must be different in Ontario, because I know here in Saskatchewan, we had pets that were getting rotated to the public school system. There was just 2 of them the first year that, 2 weeks for every public school in town type thing. So that people would just get exposed to them briefly. But they ended up selling those for like $150 a couple years later when they upgraded everything to Apple IIs.
Is my face the computer that you're talking about?
Do you want to share that, Mark? Here, if you're kicking around here so that...
hang on, I'm trying to burn my fingers.
It's a Rick Ulan screen.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, that was them.
That's kind of a cool looking system.
Yeah, that was them. It was something. Let's just
Mark,
put it
can you
that
zoom
way.
that up to full screen so the 3 of us?
We hated it. We hated it as kids. Let's put it that way.
Did you load by tape?
No, there was a central. I remember correctly. There was like a central shared floppy drive that was used by the whole school. It was like a networked floppy system.
It looks a lot like a VAX cluster where you had the one machine that was smart and a bunch of dummies.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, exactly what it was. But they weren't like, I don't know, there was a backroom deal between the school board and these guys back then. But
green or amber?
Green.
I can see the trackball on there, so it's kind of like offset up from the keyboard, which is kind of
it is offset
right
up.
beside it.
Yeah, it wasn't very ergonomic. Let's put it that way. And I think there was like one game ever made for it. It was like a Centipede clone, if I remember.
Now, was the monitor attached like part of the case, or was that just on top?
No, it's part of the case, and it kind of, you could swivel and rotate it. It was like kind of on a ball.
So for that time period, that would not have been a cheap machine, I'm guessing.
Oh, I don't think so. Not at all. Yeah, I ran QNIX. I remember that. God, that brings back some terrible memories. But then eventually that contract died out, and we came into class one day and they were all gone and they were all replaced with the Educator 64s, which really were 64s jammed in pet cases. And I think it was more of a way to make sure no one stole them than anything else.
Yeah, that is an odd looking machine. Now, Unisys, they're more famous for, aren't they more famous for like mainframes or minis or something?
Yeah. Now it was their Ontario division that developed this thing.
Unisys is kind of what the Seven Dwarfs all ended up in the end congealing down to.
Yep.
It was Sperry, Rand, Univac, Burroughs.
God, names I haven't heard in a very long time.
No, it's not a Wang.
No, it's not a Wang.
Wang Chung.
But yeah, long way about to answer the question, was the CoCo community popular in Toronto? Yeah, it was. It was. And the schoolyard fights between the CoCos and the C64s were alive and well when I was a kid.
Yeah, for me, it was more the Apple IIs and the CoCos, I guess, were the ones that we argue about in school. Because when I was first in high school and stuff, the Commodore 64 wasn't out yet. The VIC-20 wasn't really competitive.
Yeah.
Atari rules.
There were Radio Shacks everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like literally everywhere. Every like 3 blocks in Toronto, there was a Radio Shack. So they made it, I think the only thing, it's one of the reasons Commodore went out and got like Canadian Tire and Zellers and every retailer they could, was to try to kind of combat the fact that there were Radio Shacks everywhere.
There was more Radio Shacks than there are Tim Hortons now, I think.
They were, God, I could remember 7 locations as a kid, like within probably 5 or 6 kilometers of my house.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. We had 1, 2, 3 in malls. We had 1 downtown. You had to go downstairs with the computer center downtown. So we had probably 6 or 7 here. And at that time, we were only 150,000 people. So.
Yeah, it was. They were everywhere.
Now, Slippy made a comment here in the chat. He said there are many people at VCF Midwest, which quite a few people attended there, who were asking if anyone was selling CoCo STCs at the show. So, have you been to any of the VCFs?
Unfortunately, I just talked about a family emergency that happened a few weeks ago. I had hotel rooms booked and everything to go to Chicago, but unfortunately, I had to deal with this family emergency, which unfortunately had taken me to Europe and back in the past couple of weeks to deal with a death in the family. But we were planning on being there, but just couldn't. Right? Yeah.
Have you been to VCFs before then, as Retro?
I have. I'm not sure. I think my dog is broken. Sorry. I think he needs to be rebooted. And Curtis remembers him. He's only about this big, but he's got a big.
He makes up for it in volume.
Yeah, exactly. I have been on a personal level. I have been to VCF East once. It's an incredible show. It's definitely, and I know that someone here is working on VCF North. Hopefully next year there'll be a VCF North in Canada.
Oh, cool.
So
I'm guessing probably in Toronto, not out here somewhere.
It'll more than likely be held in Toronto. Yes, it will more than likely be held in Toronto, but there's a committee of people who have gotten the rights for the VCF North name, and will be hopefully next year we'll have a VCF North.
Cool. Do you have any idea at this point what time of the year that would be?
No. No. I don't even think it's been discussed yet.
Okay. They're still in the early stages.
It's still in the early stages. I think the aim is kind of late summer, like beginning of August type of thing. That's kind of the aim. Don't want to really step on or be too close to any of the other ones. I don't think they're allowed to be, but it is in the works, and hopefully, and then there's also talk.
Not January.
No, I don't think January. It's not. Toronto's not as bad as Saskatoon. It is bad, but nowhere near as bad as a place like Saskatoon, which is a lot further north than we are. Remember, there's a lot of places. If you look at a map, there's a lot of places in the U.S. that are a lot further north than Toronto. Right? We kind of dig into that peak
by the Great Lakes. Yeah.
Yeah, by the Great Lakes. So there's a lot of places. Like hell, Seattle's further north than Toronto when you look at a map. So.
But the West Coast gets a lot of buffering from the ocean, though. Vancouver,
yeah,
BC,
they do.
Seattle and Portland are moderate.
They do, but there are places, man. There are places in the U.S. that are a lot colder than Toronto in the winter. It is cold. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like Saskatoon because I've been to Saskatoon in
40.
I've been to Saskatoon in January, February, and March, and it's not pretty.
Yeah.
Well,
I would recommend coming to visit up here in the summer.
Will people from the U.S. be allowed to come to VCF North?
I'm sure. I can't really speak on behalf of the Canadian Border and Security Agency, but I mean, I'm sure if you meet all the criteria where they're going to let you in the country, there's no reason.
It might depend if you're trying to bring a USB charger and a Deltoid can.
They let the U.S. Border Protection let Curtis and I in a couple months ago into the U.S. So if we can get into the
we
U.S.,
have them hoodwinked, eh?
That's right. There's no reason that you guys can't come up here.
Well, right now they let anybody in.
So is that Rick that had another comment, or who was somebody else was talking?
Don't have it in Anchorage. That's a little bit north of you guys.
Yeah, there's also talk about VCF Northwest as well, which I think is kind of they're looking at in the Vancouver area sometime next year.
That'd be good because I mean Seattle and Vancouver are just a couple hour drives. So
so like in 20 years there'll be a southwest.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. North.
Yeah, VCF South by Southwest. They'll combine the two shows.
Right. North by East West.
Yeah, I think we did one in Saskatoon. It'd be like me, Bill, and maybe Jason, and that'd probably be it.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. The VCF shows are fantastic. They really are.
Yeah. Well, we covered it last week. I don't know if you had a chance to,
I did it. Played in the background while I was working.
Yeah, because we had a couple live tours through there, and Taylor and Amy, of course, released their video earlier with their getting sing-alongs with a lot of the big YouTubers and stuff.
Yeah, with Adrian and who else was it? Ben Heck, I think, too. Yeah.
It does look like a lot of fun. I mean, it's just like, any of the fest there when you get a lot of people like-minded into the retro. It generally tends to be fun because it's partly like a social club meeting. It's not just, like going to Comdex where it's like business type stuff, like we're trying to set up deals and checking out new hardware and software like the old days. It's more for the fun, the camaraderie.
That's exactly.
And you happen to be selling software and hardware at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, the shows we've done, none of them, I mean, we're not going there with the intent of selling stuff or, trying to figure out if we're going to break. It has nothing to do with that as much as it is just kind of hanging out with people, meeting like-minded people, chatting, having conversations with people. I mean, Boat Fest is the perfect example. It was a long ass drive. Let's be honest.
No,
three of us. Well, I mean, we were only there for a couple of days. It's not like we were down there for a week, but I had a fantastic time. And I think the best time we had was kind of after hours, once the kind of show wrapped up and the mysterious moonshine started to appear and, people actually got to playing video games and having fun and just chatting and walking around. It was a fantastic time. I mean, we do the World of Commodore here every year. And it's the same thing. I mean, we get probably 350 people that go through over a weekend, but it's more of just kind of a place to hang out and chat and all that stuff.
Well,
I'm going to have to reboot him.
Back in the old days when we went to CoCo Fest, it was after hours was swapping for programs and stuff because
copy parties all the time.
Oh,
so World of Commodore, when Commodore used to put it on here in Toronto, there was always a hotel room booked solely for copy fests.
No
statute of limitations, Frank. Statute of limitations.
We've all had those, I guess. CoCo Fest nowadays, I mean, now it's a jam session or whatever. You get everybody gets up and plays guitar and sings poorly, both cases. So,
well, we used to have local computer clubs, which were more oriented toward that too, and those are gone now. So now we just have CoCo Fest.
But ironically, the pirates have helped actually save software that would be totally gone and disappeared by now if it wasn't for them. So, in the long run, it's beneficial that they did all that.
Best way to look at it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still some unicorn programs for the CoCo we have not been able to find. We found the ads for it. We did talk to people who actually owned it 30, 40 years ago. Nobody has it anymore.
How come we never have on the people that have cracked programs?
Because I don't know how to look up Captain Kidd on the net.
Captain Crack or whatever.
I've done 1 or 30.
Yeah, I've done a few myself.
Cracks
too.
on the 64 and 1 or 2 on the Amiga, but mostly on the 64. And you know what? It's amazing that, and I'm sure this is the same thing in the CoCo community, at least in the 8-bit Commodore community, like every week, someone is discovering something that, has been lost and all of a sudden has been found, a piece of software or something that, and if it wasn't for those groups back then, you're right, they would have been lost to time, right?
Yeah. I mean, a bit of a different side story to that. Like we showed it last week, but Nick had a visit from Michael Duncan wrote the Xenon game we had as a game on Challenge here a month or two ago. And way back in the 80s, Michael had come to visit Nick and gave him a copy of his next game, which was in progress, never got released. So this is even more rare than, something that had to get cracked. And it's not fully finished, but we actually got to show a video of it being played that Nick managed to make, so that, that's a bit of history we have preserved. But there's some other people like in Tasmania that published a bunch of games, and there's an enhancement to BASIC and a bunch of things that Nick and I have been trying to find, Brian Palmer as well, and we just can't find it. We know it was sold. It was advertised for months in the Australian Rainbow and stuff, and it sounds really interesting from reading the description in the ad, but no idea.
There's always a chance that some of these people are going to come on, online, aware to the group, being a CoCo owner in the past, and have hoarded their stuff, and they may have some of this stuff. And,
well, that's what Brian Weisler's been doing. He's been trying to hunt down more of the hardware side of things, but he's actually gotten a few of these rare things that, there's only a couple known to still be in existence.
In someone's garage somewhere in a disc box, long forgotten.
I found a tape of a demo for the MC10, I think it was, that they played in the Radio Shack. It had a label on it that, it's for demo only.
Yeah.
Well,
I remember way back when we interviewed the image producers that were part of one of the software teams that was actually allowed to work on the CoCo 1 before it was released. They started working in February of 80 with that wooden breadboard thingy. And Glenn had written a demo for Christmas for the very first year the CoCo was on sale on cassette, and it was only shown in a few local stores, I think in the Chicago area. And that one's disappeared. He still remembers the demo from writing it, but nobody's seen it since 81.
I think I talked to Curtis about this months ago. I bought a CoCo 2 from, I happened to be in Ottawa doing something. I was kind of like flipping through the classified ads, and sure enough, some woman had a CoCo 2 from her kids for sale, and I stumbled across a couple Rainbow cassettes that were missing in the archive. And it's like, hey, I've got them right here. Well, there's 2 of them. I got 2 of them right here. I just found in a box. Two of the ones that are missing. So, sometimes these things you stumble across them, right? And hopefully, eventually, all that missing stuff will be found.
Yeah. Well, speaking along that line, like I've been doing a major cleanup of the house here, getting rid of stuff, and I've been going through stuff in the basement and in the garage and the shed that has not seen the light of day for 20-25 years. And I know people have been trying to get all the Glenside Computer Club newsletters up on the archive here. And I found, probably about 8 issues that are not on the archive that I've had buried away that I didn't even know I had. So sometime before Christmas, I'll try to get all those scanned and uploaded as well. But yeah, I mean, the preservation of this stuff is one of the reasons that, as a commercial software developer selling Nitrous 9, I hated piracy at the time. Because that was how we paid for going to shows and stuff like that, was basically selling it. But nowadays, Nitrous 9 being an exception because it became open source, so obviously that wasn't a big deal there. But for a lot of the commercial stuff, it's gone if you don't have it. Especially if it was a game that didn't sell that well, but it's still historical. It might have been so and so's first game before you got really good, or whatever it happens to be. So, I think there was some other comments here.
So you've always done hardware. Have you ever programmed a game?
I've never programmed a game. I've never, frankly, had the patience to do so. It's like this undiagnosed ADHD. I'd be like an hour into it, and I'd be like, "Oh, look, shiny object! I'm going to go work on that." And unfortunately, you can't really do that when you're trying to create a game.
But when you first get your machine, didn't you crack open the manual and start going through and type in?
I did. Yeah, absolutely, I did. But
convinced you not to do it.
Well, I think I went more along the lines of the nefarious, hey, let me figure out exactly how they're doing this code wheel thing, or let me figure out exactly how to bypass this weird copy protection that happens to look for a specific bad block on the disk that won't be copied. Dissecting what other people would do than actually trying to build something from scratch.
The reverse engineering more than that.
Yeah.
So we got a couple suggestions here for VCF. So Buck Owen said VCF Great White North might be a good name for it.
Yep.
Texas Foosballer, one of the Amigos guys, he says Texas would be a nice place. Have it too.
It's a weird representation of the North, but we'll go with it.
Brian Wall suggests VCF Northwest Territories. If Saskatoon's not cold enough for you, we can fix that.
Tell you one thing.
Yellowknife, there we go.
Lodging would be a lot cheaper in Yellowknife than it would be in Toronto.
Yeah, but gas would be like $8 a gallon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Mind you, it's small enough. You probably could just walk, right?
Yeah, then you could go visit Buffalo Airways.
Go up to Great Slave Lake.
Pretty soon people will be talking about how many charges to a destination.
Yeah.
Their security might be looser. You might be able to take your deltoid can though without being worried.
Yeah. Or worse.
What is this thing? It's a portable heater. Oh, then you're fine.
That's right. You're fine. Yeah.
Sixie's Karen Anscombe in the chat here. He's one of the main Dragon guys. He's programmed games like Dungeons and stuff and done a lot of cool stuff.
And he
said, surely most of us have cracked programs. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
And he wrote the XROR emulator.
Yep. Both the online version and the standalone. And Rick, you're talking about molding on flop. You said who knew floppies were the best way to grow mold? What I kind of missed that conversation. So what's going on there?
Apparently, anytime you put floppies in the proverbial cool, dry place to save them, they will mold right up on you if the humidity is above 20%. Yeah. So the
Arizona,
ones that,
no problem.
Right. Yeah, the ones that I had up in the attic where it's relatively hot but not Texas hot are fine. The ones that were in the basement are trash.
Well, I heard that there is a way to wash the mold off that you
There is, yeah. It's laborious though. And kind of, I mean, I've had to do it once or twice to get specific piece of software that I know very well I wouldn't be able to get anywhere else. Is something I wrote, was a cracking tool from the late 80s that I wrote myself, and I knew was nowhere else that I really needed to get access to. And I had to like take the sleeve apart and, remove the actual disc and there's a way to clean it, but it's a very laborious process. It's not something you really want to do unless you absolutely have to. And then it's not always guaranteed either.
Yeah. Hey, for people on the panel, do you guys have any questions? I'm kind of trying to monitor the chat here too. I mean, I could play tons of videos and show more pictures, but embarrassing.
Nobody wants to see that. Trust me.
This week on Embarrassing Frank.
Yeah, exactly.
We did see a few bald-faced ones and then a very light beard. So we've seen the progression of your beard here. Now we just need that for Rick and Ron.
Frank, when have you started to watch CoCoTALK? Because we've been around 4 years, 5 years?
5+ now, I think.
Probably about 2.5 years ago.
So pretty close to when Retro Rewind started.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was around the same time. Actually, it was just before Retro Rewind started. It was watching the Amigos that I kind of stumbled upon CoCoTALK, where I went, oh yeah, I used to own a CoCo. Jesus Christ, I remember that. And then that opened Pandora's box because it was like, I need to buy a CoCo.
Products
I need to buy a CoCo again. Let's go find a CoCo. And I could find a 1 and a 2 real easy. 3 was difficult. It was actually Curtis who helped me find the first 3 I had a long time ago. Because they're not really kicking around everywhere. And now mysteriously, I think I own 7 of them. I'm not sure how that happened, but there's like 7 of them in the back room.
So you and Brian Weasler have all the CoCo 3s. Everybody's been trying to find a decent price.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just like oh, you want to? It's broken? I'll buy it. Sure, no problem. I mean, gladly I'll buy it if it's broken. It's a lot cheaper that way.
So these people that sold you the CoCo 3s, they don't want them repaired for themselves. They just said, that's broken. I don't want to deal with it, and they just give it to me.
No, the first CoCo I bought, you helped me locally, and that was 100% working, which is fantastic because it allowed me to start doing some development work on some of our products, and then. Like, I'm sure a lot of people on here are very similar. You should never be allowed to hit eBay when you've consumed alcohol, ever. And I have that problem, right? I have that, friends don't let friends eBay and drink. Well, I got that problem. I'm sitting on the couch at night watching TV with my wife and perusing eBay after having a glass or 2 or 6 of wine.
What's cool is you're still married.
Yeah. Listen, thankfully, I've been married a long time, well over 20 years, and my wife is fantastic. She, but remember, I'm only 24 years old.
That's right.
So my wife allows me to indulge. I mean, she's got her hobbies, and so it's been a perfect match. She gets out of my way in certain things, I get out of her way, and it's perfectly fine. And she's very supportive.
Yeah.
She
I think
helps
the
quite a bit
only
with the business
friction you've talked about is the fact that Retro Rewind has taken over most of the house.
that's the friction. It's like, we need the house back. You need to get the hell out now.
That's the part that's tough.
Yeah, it's like, want to put the car back in the garage. You know, why we have a second shed now to store the garden tools, because the other shed is now fully occupied with stock.
Do you ever get a comment like, you're buying this stuff, what are you getting rid of?
Well, in the beginning I did until this thing actually started turning a profit. And then it was just like, all right, it's turning a profit. He clearly must be doing something right, or bull crapping his way through something again. So that kind of ended. But yeah, we need the space back, because it's getting a bit ridiculous. Really is.
Yeah, hopefully you find the storefront that you were looking for. I know you'd looked at one when we were down there, but it sounds like that kind of fell through. Maybe the wrong size or sold.
Like the other problem is there's certain things we need. Like, we need full plumbing, right? So that, we can get stuff out of the ovens into the ultrasonic cleaners and into the proper baths. And we need certain types of electricity. So trying to find something that will suit that generally tends to be larger industrial areas, and like, I don't need 3,000 square feet. I wish I did. I wish we were that, doing that much business, but 3,000 square feet is a little excessive for what we need. Kind of trying to stay around the 12 to 1,500 square feet type of thing, which would be fine.
Go for it. Think big. 3,000 square feet. You'll grow into it.
There's a big lease difference on cost between 3,000 square feet and 1,200 square feet,
especially in Toronto.
Yeah,
what about a three-bedroom house?
Yeah, well, I've got one of those.
But got it.
Yeah, zoning becomes an issue then, right?
Oh, and then the electric too.
Yeah, as my lawyer keeps telling me. So, and I want to be relatively close to home. Problem with Toronto is, for those of you that have never been to the city, it's the second busiest traffic city in North America. It's only second to LA. And it's a very geographically big city. So from the eastern border to the western border is about 49 kilometers long, which is, I don't know
30 miles.
what you guys Americans use. Yeah. So let's say 30 miles. And trying to get across from one end of the city to the other in rush hour will easily take you 2.5 hours of travel. So, I mean, I found places. I don't want to commute 2.5 hours each way and still be in the same city, for the love of God. That's the last thing I want. So it's like, we're holding off, there's industrial areas that are zoned industrial not far from us. So it's just like, that would be perfect. But, they've got a 20-year lease. That would be perfect. But their lease doesn't expire for another 10 years. So it's just a waiting game more than anything.
How about building your own place? Maybe you have a rich uncle somewhere.
Yeah, well, in Toronto, there's no free land, right? I mean, that's the problem. Is like the majority of the, like, what is it? Like 65% of the population in Canada lives in Southern Ontario, right? Because we have a lot of land that's literally unlivable, right? Like in the real north, and then places like where Curtis lives doesn't really get a lot of people migrating to it because of their crazy winters, right? Trying to find land here is near impossible, really is. And rich uncle, you need about 7 rich uncles to be able to buy some land.
Toronto's is it the first place for the most expensive place in Canada, or is it second?
Correct.
Now between them and Vancouver?
We flip between us and Vancouver. It's like
the average house price right now is $1.1 million or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah. So like I live in I own like a 1,400 square foot bungalow. It's nothing huge. I mean, Curtis has been here. It's not big at all. And I could sell my place for like $1.5 million easy all day.
You should move to Buffalo.
Yeah. You know what? Universal healthcare. That's kind of my key thing here, right? Universal healthcare. Just unfortunately, even though Buffalo's only like an hour and 15 minutes away.
Right. I used to live in Rochester.
Right across the lake from us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We used to at one point have the ferry that would go directly from Toronto to Rochester. You can just take the ferry right across.
We used to see, you guys used to send us a large, here they call it a haboob, but over there it's like a wall of snow coming from you.
Yeah. Yeah. So
we're a very kind, sharing country, so that's
right.
expected.
That's right. We've got too much. Why don't you guys have some?
Yeah.
Alberta Clippers, here you go.
Yeah. There's got to be more questions. I mean, we've only been at this for an hour and 45 minutes. Come on.
Well, we did interview once before here, so I mean,
that's true. That's true.
Three to go.
Just seeing where they're coming in the comments here. I've been trying to keep up. Pedro Pena made a comment earlier under his name, Rocky Hill here. He's the guy who's been designing those replacement motherboards, CoCo 2s and 3s. And he says, you're the one who's been taking all the CoCo 3 boards you've been trying to buy. So
I mean, it's just like I said, they just appear. I go through I wake up in the morning, look at my email. I'm like, when did I buy that on eBay? Oh no. Did I do it again? I did it again. Jesus, why did I do that again?
Yeah, you have to take a look at your liquor bill at the same time. Okay, that was what caused that one.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be some sort of challenge add-on I can add to eBay that's going to force me, like Google has, like Gmail has, force me to do some complicated math formula computation before I buy anything.
What about a breathalyzer for eBay?
Yeah.
There you go. That'll be a hot seller.
Problem with that is I'll never buy anything off eBay then.
Well, he would probably hack it.
Yeah.
Ignition interlock.
Yeah, you'd hack an override for yourself.
Yeah,
obviously.
That's right, for myself.
Ignition interlock for eBay.
Now, just out of curiosity, because you do sell quite a bit to Europe and Asia and Australia and everywhere else, the sales, especially with Amiga stuff, because I mean that's something that it generally has a bigger European community, even though it started in the States. What are the sales percentages like? Like, where does most of your sales go geographically as opposed to by product?
I'm going to keep going until I pull up our reports here, and I'll tell you. I think the number one is North America, to be honest with you. And then number two would be the UK. So let's see here. So US, number one. Canada, second. England, third. Germany, fourth. Australia, fifth. And then a whole bunch of groupings of places like Switzerland, France, New Zealand, Argentina, Brazil. They're kind of all grouped in there, but the number one has got to be the US, Canada, and then the UK. Those are the hotbeds of products.
So if the UK is third, it might be like, since the CoCo SDC works on dragons, and of course that's where most of the dragon community is, that might be something to advertise there too, if you haven't already.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I break down CoCo SDC sales, it'll be US, Canada, Australia, and then Brazil. I didn't know that was that big in Australia, to be honest with you.
Well, Australia, I mean, we've been talking about this. I mean, Nick can talk about it too if he's still on the call and still awake. Is the fact that the CoCo 3 was not released in all the countries that CoCo 1 and 2. The CoCo 1 and 2 was sold in Germany and the UK and everywhere else, but the CoCo 3 was not. It was basically Canada, States, and Australia, and that's pretty well it. Mark Siegel, if he's still in the chat, can attest to that.
That's why there's a PAL version. Thank you, Australia.
Yeah, honestly, it's the only reason there's a PAL version.
And then all the clones in Brazil, like you said, right?
Yeah, CP400 and a whole bunch of others. They still have an annual gathering that they do every year too for the CoCo and its clones.
And I just learned that there was a huge CoCo community in Colombia too, from a gentleman by the name of Fabian, who I met at the he was at the computer show in Thing. He's now relocated here to Quebec in Canada, but he is originally from Colombia and ran like a huge user group in Colombia of CoCo users. So it always amazes me. I love hearing these stories because it's just like, wow, I really wouldn't have pictured the CoCo being a massive computer in Colombia, but it was in the 80s, right? It was a really popular micro back then.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Did he make the CoCo Fest this year, guys? Do you remember? I think Fabian was there, wasn't he? Jason?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, he was. He said he was. Yeah.
And he was also at VCF Midwest.
He was, yeah. He's got his motorhome and he's been kind of traveling all over the place to the different shows. I got 2 of his machines to fix here. 2 of the CoCos that need repair are his.
Do you do Apple stuff too and other things, repairs and?
Not really. And it's more like, eventually we want to expand more, but we want to stay grounded until we can get a facility and maybe another body or 2, because the last thing I want to do is spread myself so thin that nothing ever gets done. And I was, although I'm a modern Apple fan and use like I'm on a MacBook Air right now, an M1 MacBook Air, never really was a big 8-bit Mac fan. I mean, I had a classic. I've got some of those machines, but I just don't want to spread myself too thin.
Did you ever get much of the Apple II line, like the 2
Never.
Plus, 2C, 2E?
I mean, I have a 2C that I own, but I mean, and I have a very unique clone that was really only a Canadian clone called a Zeus that I accidentally stumbled upon that I really want to maybe sell, to be honest with you. But I never really did. And I rather focus on, like, we have plenty of repair business right now, like plenty. So spreading ourselves too thin. I mean, I've done favors for people that, have reached out. Like I just fixed a PVM for someone because I've got a lot of, NTSC testing and repair tools that I bought real cheap when nobody wanted them. So I'll do a small thing here or there and do people favors, but generally we kind of stick within the Commodore and the CoCo line only, just to be able to stay focused and be efficient and get stuff done.
Yeah, you don't want to have too many of those having to stay up till 3 a.m. making Coke STCs because you sold out.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not very smart when it comes to other lines of computers.
Neither am I, so we're perfect.
Well, my question is, we had the Tomcat and the MM1. Do other computers have an equivalent of, like on your way to heaven type stuff where, it was an expansion of trying to run the same software but moving up? I mean,
you mean independently as opposed to the company itself doing it? Kind of like,
yeah, we have the MM1 and we have the Tomcat. They weren't very successful, but it was an attempt to go higher and still have some compatibility. The
Amiga does.
They do?
Yeah. So like the Apollo team, the Vampire, the Buffy stuff we've been working on. I'm sure there's others I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
But
well, they had their PowerPC run too. Like
they did.
Like
Yeah.
what Apple
Yeah. They
did,
had. Yeah, they had PPC cards that you could and would still maintain compatibility. The problem is now you're pushing the limits of the buses and everything else, right?
Yeah.
And then is it really like the Vampire, which is a fantastic product, but it's essentially just an FPGA that happens to be using the input-output bus of the Amiga, nothing else on it, right? So then you get into these arguments, and this is where I go back to the infighting in the Amiga community, and then it's like, well, the purists, that's not really an Amiga, and the rest of us are like, who really cares? Like, we need to stop these arguments. It's just really an FPGA that happens to use the keyboard and the joystick ports and nothing else. Like, none of the other custom chips are being used. Yeah, but it's an advancement is what it is.
Yeah, Stevie brings that up on the CoCo stuff, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, we had that whole argument in the 90s with the CoCo 4s. Like you were talking about the Tomcat System 4 and 5 from Delamar, M1, because the Tomcat, the TC9 portion, not the TC70 portion, was trying to get like a juiced up CoCo 3, basically. It was using the same hardware. It had gimmies. I mean, Frank bought the last 500 that Tandy had. But the other ones are all basically going, they were going to make OSK machines, 68000 based, whatever, with OS 9 for the OS 9, for the 68000s. But a lot of the CoCo community was not into OS 9. I mean, obviously, I'm a rabid fan of it, but, at that time, it was maybe 50-50. If you're lucky, it was probably less. And you're basically, we're trying to tell everybody, if you want to, continue this upward trend here of getting new hardware, you're going to have to like ditch all your disk basic stuff and just switch to OS 9, which a lot of people did not want to do. And that started the big infighting between disk basic.
And there was no ease of use back then.
No. And to be honest, back then, I hadn't even thought of it. It's like, if you're too stupid to learn this, too bad. was my attitude, which is not the right attitude to have, obviously, but that was it. I mean, Nick can attest that because we used to fight on listserv all the time.
Sometimes the truth, though, is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, well, I got to eat my own dinner when I came back into it and discovered they changed a lot of commands that I'd been used to, and all of a sudden I was the newbie trying to learn all this stuff. And I understand what you guys were bitching about before now.
I think this hardware division is kind of interesting though, because that's exactly the sort of fissure I'm aiming for. So like my network card uses a WizNet chip, which has a little bit of smarts in it, but it's not like I just took a Pi and stuck it in there and run a serial to it. It's a little bit CoCo.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, there's like, we've got the Kung Fu Flash for the Commodore 64, which is a full-blown computer upon itself, right? Like it really is. It is like the CoCo Flash, the Kung Fu Flash itself is 100 times more powerful than the Commodore 64 on itself. But I mean, it enhances, and some people, that's not, it's not original, and it's not. Like, come on, those arguments are long gone. Stop it.
I don't want to.
You want this hobby to expand, and you want it to keep growing, but every time someone does something, you start crying foul. It's like, come on.
Well, shoot, even Tandy itself did that with the business line, like the 21216. By itself, without any expansions, it ran Z80. You add the 68,000 set to it. The Z80 was only handling I/O.
Yeah, because then it became a Xenix machine.
Right. Yeah. Xenix was running on the 68,000. The Z80 was just there just to handle the I/O part.
And the ultimate TC Tomcat that Frank was doing was going to be the same thing. The K bus was this 16 32-bit backplane, and you plug a TC9, which is basically a CoCo 3 with the Mega RAM on it and juiced up serial ports and juiced up I/O. But basically a CoCo 3 on a board or two board set. But you were supposed to plug that into the backplane, then the TC70 or even the Kix 20, Kix 30, like the high-end machines, 68,020, 68,030, would then start using the Tomcat, the TC9, as an I/O board. So it would handle like joysticks and mice and have its own screen display. And that's all it would be basically used for. And they would just, the 68,000 would be doing most of the work. And that was the ultimate plan for that. It never got finished. The hardware support is kind of in there. The interrupt system was set up, but nobody bothered programming for it because it gets complicated. And the two, like you said, it's no longer a CoCo at that point. The CoCo is just I/O board.
Yeah, and literally all it is, right?
Yeah, and for some people that they wanted to keep advancing and they wanted to do that.
Well, they had all that software.
Yeah, I mean nowadays, machines are fast enough. You can just emulate everything, and then you don't really notice the difference. Though emulation's not perfect. There are programs that we recently found that have glitched out. Had to get patched to get to run properly, like Photon being one. Grabber for the 609 need to be patched, and et cetera, et cetera. And then there are people that I want time period correct upgrades only type things. So
yeah, and then you've got like the Amiga OS4 ecosystem, which is like their own processors, their own everything. They've kind of tried to redevelop everything. So there's always, you're always going to get that. The fact that people complain about it is still mind-boggling to me because it's just like. It's a bonus to all of us. Like, why? Like, who cares? And who cares?
Don't you think after the new blood comes in, they're not going to be thinking that way? Probably, it's just the older guy.
And I think it's the new blood that is developing this stuff, right? I think it's like Kim, the guy who does the Kung Fu Flash. I think he's in like his late 20s, right? So it's like, he didn't really have the experience we did. He wasn't even around when these things were, at the height of their popularity. So, we have to keep this hobby growing some way, somehow.
I think we have to keep all of those going because you will have, like in my personal case, I don't mind adding new hardware that's more powerful than the computer if it serves a purpose. Yeah. But one of the reasons I stay in the retro community and do stuff like Nitrous 9 is I want to see, given infinite time, which of course, when you're doing commercial products, you don't have. So you rush something out for Christmas, you rush something out for the next buying season, whatever. So nobody actually takes the hardware and actually pushes it all the way to the limits as it was back then. Now that we have the time, because there is no time limit and you can just basically do it when you have free time and feel like doing it. I want to see how far we could have pushed the system, given the hardware we had back then, what you could do with it now, just with all the extra time and learning techniques.
Well, lots of people are, right? Yeah. I mean, there's like the stuff Nick's creating, the games are incredible. There are like new games for the Commodore 64 all the time that are pushing the system in ways no one ever pushed 30
even the
years
Amiga
ago.
for that matter, I've seen some.
Some of those demo competitions that people are doing is mind blowing. That we've also got more modern tools, and it's like cheating. Like I wrote a demo for the Commodore 64 for Retro Rewind, right? So that when we it shows the kind of demos running, right? And I had a conversation with someone. I think we even talked about this in the drive, where it was just like, yeah, like I use modern tools to create it. I didn't sit there on my 64 and write the demo. Like I'm not sadistic. Like I need like search and replace and they're like, well, that's not really. I said, why? Why is it not really an authentic thing? I mean, it's done. I got it done. It's coded to the CPU. It runs on it. Like, yeah. So I use like a modern IDE to write it so that like I could do it in like 2 hours instead of 3 weeks that it probably would have taken me if I sat there hammering on my 64 keyboard. Like I don't understand some of these arguments, but we've got those tools now and people are using them and that's fantastic.
And it's okay to use the old ones too. Like Nick still uses AdTab and stuff on a real CoCo, and I still use some of the stuff there. Now, if I have a really huge project that's going to take 5 minutes fully to assemble, I'll just run an emulator, overclock it. Now it's just like running a modern one. So you can mix and match as much as you like.
Exactly. And it's like, I'm using a modern IDE. Hell, search and replace is not available in the 64. Like, why wouldn't I? Like, I just, whatever, to each his own.
Yeah.
What's wrong with
I do have
sadistic?
search and replace on mine. I definitely use that. So
there's nothing wrong with being sadistic. But sometimes time constraints, right? I mean, I can write this thing in 20 minutes in a modern IDE, or I can spend 3 weeks, on a 40 column screen hammering away on a keyboard.
See, I viewed like for myself, because I do like using the old tools. And if I did, like I said, if I have a really big project, I will throw in an emulator and it'll clock the crap out of it. So it takes 5 seconds instead of 5 minutes. But it kind of pushes me to either find tools that were the best of the breed at the time that maybe I didn't know back then. That you do have global search and replace and all kinds of things like that, like you're mentioning, or it spurs you on to actually try to improve the tools from back then. So it's once again pushing the hardware type thing. Yeah, and, I've optimized the assembler in OS 9, so it's 12% faster or something. Not a huge amount, but it's noticeable. Even in the emulator, now it takes 4 seconds instead of 5.
Or you do it like Nick Marenti's.
Yeah, totally old school. Except he's using a CoCo STC. He's not completely going back to floppies or anything here. So,
nah.
But I mean, it's also muscle memory. Like Nick and I have been programming for quite a while, so there's so many inborn things that you don't even have to think about. You just it's just a reflex, and you type in a certain sequence.
You can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah,
that's not true, Nick.
Some of those new tricks are pretty slick, though. They really are. When you come to think of it, like
Nick, go ahead.
Like on the 64, like I've got a 64 NIC hooked up to mine, which is essentially a network card, and I mean I can develop software on my Mac and compile and push it to the 64 in real time and see if it works. Like it's all integrated at that point.
Just like DriveWire on the CoCo does.
Yeah, I could push it device as well. But I can actually fully push it to my 64, like in real time, and see if it works.
Is that Jim Brain's?
Which is neat.
Is that Jim Brain's C64 NIC Plus?
Absolutely, it is.
Excellent hardware. He has a version for the CoCo in development.
It's incredible. It really is incredible.
Yes.
And Nick, I mean, he always claims that he does everything old school. He uses DriveWire. He uses the CoCo STC. So I mean, he's not a purist himself.
Oh.
Shh! Don't tell everyone.
I sure don't draw things with a ink pen and drafting vellum anymore.
Yeah, like someone said to me, like the demo has our logo in it on a C64, and they're like, "Wow, did you like draw that by hand?" I'm like, "No, like I used a modern converter, like to just take our logo and convert it. How the hell would I sit there draw the thing in koala paint by hand? Like that's insanity."
Yeah, that's what I did in my Liberation game. I actually drew everything in MV Canvas locally on the CoCo, which that's how I discovered I have no artistic bent, because I did jump over to a modern thing and try to do it there, and I sucked just as bad there as I did on the old stuff. So
yeah, I just added a plugin to Photoshop to export it into a compatible format to Koala. That's all I did. Just pushed it over. There you go, done.
Yeah, it's I think the thing with the retro community for all of them, no matter what platform you're on, is that there is a wide variety of why they're interested in it. And you've got all the way from the purest. I just want the original hardware. I don't even want the add-ons that came a year later. I want that first year the CoCo came out in 1980. I want a 4K D-board CoCo Grace, case CoCo one with a chiclet keyboard, type thing. Up to the people that want to add in a network card that's 50,000 times more powerful than the CoCo itself, and everybody in between. And I think it's just fine. Pick whatever
They're
you're
all
comfortable
right.
with.
You're
and
right.
you might bounce
Everyone
back
is
and forth
correct.
between them as you progress yourself. That's fine too.
Yep. Yeah, I needed to get my, the original tape drive I had for my CoCo, and built cables for it, loaded one program off tape, and then said, "Okay, you're going away for the rest of your life. You'll be put away in storage." I did what I needed to do. I've done it. Not doing that again.
Well, you should talk to David Ladd because he's got some stuff where he's running at like 6,000, 9,000 baud. You should try that.
But it's like I've got the CoCo SDC.
Hey, now.
Like, okay, I'm done. Like if I need to fire something up, I'll just fire it up on the SDC.
Yeah, I'm assuming. Sorry, what was that, Dave?
No, I was just saying that there's, 230K on the Deluxe RS-232 pack and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, you're one of the ones that likes taking the original hardware and pushing it. Like the cassette you did, that digital one. It was what baud rate you guys get up to? I can't remember now.
I don't know, but it was quite fast. Using a
it was
like
10 to 15
player.
times faster than stock 1500 baud, which was for that time was pretty fast compared to most other micros. So I mean, you were loading at disk drive speeds at that point.
Yeah, well, I had the comparison video just for the cassettes. I never did get around to including a comparison of loading from floppy.
You should compare with the Commodore 64 floppy unmodified. That would be an interesting one.
Yeah, I have 3 1541s. I don't know if that would be a good comparison.
I don't think we have that kind of time.
Yeah. You think the show's long now? We'll do a live compare.
No, we accidentally stumbled upon a video which one of our products was in channels called Veronica Explains. And it kind of blew my mind because I think it's up to like almost 500,000 views, which is in the retro community is kind of mind blowing. And
That is.
literally and it's called Veronica. I'll find it and I'll send it to you guys. Veronica Explains, and it was literally about getting a Commodore 64 online. And there are like 14,000 comments talking about, and it's the exact same argument as like, oh, well, is this cheating? Is it not? What if I still had my original 1200 baud modem? But then it's like I know in the city of Toronto, there is no copper PSTN infrastructure anymore. None, zero zilch. So like you couldn't use a modem if you tried. Everything's fiber. And it still blows my mind that there's enough people in this community that can draw like 500,000 views in a YouTube video. And I think it's up to, I will find it. And it was just like, I had no idea. We sold like, when this video came out, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, it was like, we sold like, I think like 75 Wi-Fi modems in one day. And I was like, what's happening? Something is coming out of nowhere. But the fact that these debates are still going on and it's mind blowing. Absolutely mind blowing.
Well, BBSs are coming back.
Yeah, and quite a bit actually.
Yeah,
quite a bit.
Going on it myself and just looking around and and I pop out and go to another one. It's fun.
Got a few people in the chat that mentioned they've seen this video too.
It's only 250,000 views. My bad. It's only 250,000 views.
Only.
So, as far as the modem part, I have had really good success using a Magic Jack for sending faxes. So,
but
people
faxes
could use
have like I think it's T46 correction built into them, where modems don't. So one of the reasons that faxes can still work over VoIP is there's actual correction built into the protocol for VoIP. I think it's the T46 spec, if I remember correctly. I went because I ran a BBS for so long, I spent a lot of time building soft modems and bridges, and somewhat successful in getting, VoIP to automatically translate to you know, a regular serial signal for the Commodore 64, that the best thing I could really do at any stability was 2400 baud, depending on the codec that's used. And that's even like, I think it was like 711, which was, you know, quite wideband, 128 bits, I think. So anything, but problem is most VoIP providers now, 729, 729A, they're narrow band and they're not wide enough to do anything above 12. Sometimes we had stability at 2400 baud, but that was it.
Right. Well, that's about the end of your actual baud, and after that, you're doing phase shifting and crap, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
It's called trellis coding.
Yep. So, but the fax protocol actually has an error correction built into it for it specifically, because people were still using fax machines. Who the hell's still using a modem except for us?
We can't say we fax on this program anymore.
Everybody drink.
I wondered how long that was going to take.
Oh, don't worry. We can add in the RS-232
Who had
drive
this-
wire and ESP8266.
Who had this time in the poll? Who was that? Who wins the square?
We need to make bingo cards for our show, just like Tim and AJ did for theirs, I guess, with all the phrases and stuff here. Pedro says modern plus VoIP equals bad in the chat there. So I don't have too many more questions myself here. Now, anybody in the panel, feel free to ask Frank some questions, but I want to, because there's a bit of a delay time on the chat here, and I know we've got some of the Amigos fans actually watching because Frank's on the show. Otherwise, why would they watch a CoCo show? So if any of you guys in there want to ask some questions of Frank, just post them in the chat here, and we'll get to them as quick as we see them. So else on the panel have any questions specifically for Frank?
Just wondering what his best-selling Amiga product is.
OS 3.2.
Right.
Easily.
Yep.
Like easily. Well, because I think currently we are the only North American reseller right now. I don't think Amiga on the Lake is authorized anymore. So I think we are the only reseller. So that's kind of, I mean, that skews numbers, because if you're in North America and you want to get it, you can really only get it from us. But apart from that, again, I'm going to filibust until I just fire up our stats information here. I'm going to probably go with the Amiga 600 accelerator card, because again, we're the only place in North America selling it.
Yeah, which actually speaks volumes for your CoCo SD sales being quite high, because you're not the only reseller in North America. In fact, most people are more familiar with that because he's been around longer.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's actually one of your best sellers, that's pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah, big time. Like the SDC is, like I said at the beginning of the show, is mind-blowing, the amount of people that still want it. Actually, the SDC is the third most sold product we have, believe it or not. For the Amiga, it would probably be, if you take 3.2 out of the mix, it would be the accelerator, the Amiga 600 accelerator card. And then the Flipbox, the network device. And then things that like Amiga coin cell adapter is like leaps and bounds, but like, I mean, listen, there's no real logic in it. It's just a diode and a CR 2032 carrier. So I don't know, people just buy it to replace the batteries, but I guess you can count that too, but I wouldn't.
Do we have a retro rewind commercial?
Yeah, we do. I'm not sure if Mark has it queued up here.
Reason being, I'm going.
Yeah, it's in the rotation.
I will mention that from chat here, Wad World of Retro is actually one of the guys that watches the Amigos regularly. He says, I got a CoCo Diag card and a CoCo STC from Frank, and they are awesome. And I know I've steered quite a few people to you for the CoCo STC on Facebook, because that's a platform you're not too active on. And, you know, most people, if the question gets asked, they mostly refer to Ed, because, of course, Ed's been making them for years.
Yeah.
But Ed's been out of stock quite often here because he's trying to catch up all the other runs like Gimme X's and everything else that he's trying to manufacture, MC10 upgrades, etc. So if they go there, well, it's sold out, I can't get an STC. Oh, yes, you can. Go to Retro Rewind. So hopefully it's helped to get some business there, and also help people get their CoCo STC without having to wait.
Yeah, it's been an incredible seller. Jesus. We got lots in stock still. 37, I think, 37, 38 right now in stock. So
Yeah, because you did that really long day where you were trying to catch them up after the show there, where you were
Yeah,
sold
I
out
think I
and you had a
did
bunch
like
of requests.
60 or 65 in one shot one weekend.
Sloopy said your CoCoTALK code expired.
It should. No, it's good until you have to log in. You have to create an account and log in to use it. You cannot use the code in an anonymous checkout. No, they're all, I'm just looking, they all expire at the end of this year, the maximum allowed.
So based on the views of this channel, compared to the 250,000 views for the other video, you should sell at least 5 CoCo SDCs.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, it's the like I said at the beginning, the CoCo community is rabid, and we're thankful for that. As long as people want it, we'll be making it. But the CoCoTALK code is valid until December 31st, 2022. But you got to be logged in. You have to create an account, log in order to use it.
Doesn't cost you anything to create an account.
Nope.
So
no,
that's the
it's just
effect.
a way of tracking, how popular the code is and all that stuff.
Okay, because it's in the crawl right underneath, right there.
Right now.
Oh, in the CoCoTALK border area.
Yeah.
It's between the the video part and the title part there.
Yeah, someone used it last night.
Okay.
Karen actually has a bit of
products, though. I'm going to be honest with you. They bought a bunch of Commodore products with the,
Yeah,
but it doesn't matter.
So Karen 60 in the chat here says, I missed the part about the diagnostic card. And he says, I'm going to have to retro rewind. So I don't know. Did you want to kind of explain the card for the people that joined in a little bit later? Because we talked about it way at the beginning.
It's the original, the base code is the original CoCo code, which Troy has been working on to patch to use, be able to check extended memory and everything else and a few other tips and tricks. So it's an itch I wanted to scratch, like I said. So I wanted a diagnostic tool that was up to snuff and supported additional features like extended memory, and we created one.
Yeah, because the original diagnostic cartridge from Tandy, they never upgraded
16K.
after the original release, so it was meant for 16K maximum.
16K only, yeah. So it took some figuring out, but Troy did that, and that's what we've got.
So there you go, Kieran. He's done some diagnostic stuff himself for like cassettes and things too. So, which I think the card covers that, joysticks and
correct.
Ports,
Yep. IO ports, everything. Yep.
And of course, there's about a 30-second delay on the chat here. So
yeah, I'm not following the chat. I've got it on my phone over there, but my old age, I really need to get my eyes checked.
Wildwood Retro asks, is the CoCo test card, will that also work on the Dragon? I think parts of it will. I don't know if the whole thing would.
That's a good question.
Because the keyboard matrix is different, for example. The joysticks are the same and address the same. So I think some of the RAM should be the same because the SAM and CPU work the same. I would say most of it will work, but maybe not all of it. First guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a Dragon to test, but I know what I'll be doing tonight, trying to buy a Dragon.
Yep.
Have a little wine, get on eBay.
6 by the end of the night. So
that's right.
A little wine, little eBay.
That's right. 3 glasses in, and all
so you know, half a dozen
Dragon
dragons
was quite
show
popular
up.
in Toronto as a kid because when I got my CoCo, I had a lot of friends who had Dragons. But then again, I could be misremembering this. It could have been apples, and I was just laughing, calling them dragons.
Just
nevertheless,
remember the Dragon 32, the Dragon 64, and then the US Tano Dragon. So these 3 models to be looking for.
Yeah,
right. But does the diagnostic cart work with the CoCo 3?
Yes. Absolutely. That I can attest to.
Are you talking about the cart?
Yeah, Frank makes a new version of what the original Tandy one was, but it handles all the extra things Tandy never added.
I have a cart in a Dragon. I can try it. I'll let you know.
You have one of our
one of Frank's carts?
No, I got the original Radio Shack.
Yeah,
cart.
no, the question's about Frank's, if it'll work. Because
well, his is the same as a clone of it, isn't it?
No, it's expanded.
Well, it's expanded. It uses, but like, for example, none of the keyboard code was rewritten because there was no need for it, right? So
that'd be the one exception, I guess. Yeah.
So, but that's a good question. Now I got to get a Dragon. Yep.
We're not helping you either.
Perfect business expense.
But yeah, Ron, the original Tandy one, for example, when it checks RAM, it only checks up to 16K because when they released it in 1980, that's all they had. So it doesn't check 32, doesn't check 64, doesn't check extended memory in the CoCo 3 pass. That doesn't do any of that stuff.
So they'll play sound.
No, it checks some of the hardware, but it doesn't check all of it. Whereas Frank's is trying to catch it up basically to where everybody's actually at.
Yeah.
So you don't have to just run Sailorman. Not that there's anything wrong with that, to check to see if your 64K is working. I would use OS9 level 1, but
I always thought that was the 64K RAM test with Sailorman.
Yeah, it tests the sound, tests the joysticks,
that's everything.
Yeah.
So what does that cost? The diagnostic.
The cart?
And do you want that in Canadian or in American dollars, Ron?
Well, it's out here in Arizona.
He needs that in Arizona dollars.
So Arizona dollars is $25.
Oh, okay.
Plus 3 cactus shipping.
So thankfully shipping's gone back down. For a bit, we were getting killed because of cost of gas, but thankfully I think it's starting to revert back to.
What is gas? Oh, it's in liters there.
Yeah.
We're like at $1.50 a liter now, which isn't too bad because at one point, I think beginning of the year, we were well over $2 a liter.
Yeah, same here. We're down to about $1.47 right now.
So. Yeah, it's like something like that.
And we were $2.09 at one point. I mean, both states and Canada that happened.
Yeah, and there's about 3.8 or 4 liters per gallon.
Something like that.
4, close to 4. Yeah.
Yeah, it's close to 4.
Something.
Imperial gallon versus US
American
gallon.
which is a little smaller. Yeah.
I'm just going for rough conversion.
Comment from Pedro. He says, another Canadian, Dennis Bisson, wrote a program that runs from ROM and uses the CPU registers, temp storage, no RAM required for a RAM test. Does this test card do something like that in order to test memory? And actually, I do remember because we covered that. Because basically, he's got the registers. The program runs in ROM and it just loads the registers and then compares between the registers and stuff like that with no stack, no RAM. So it can literally check every byte of the RAM if even one byte's bad.
So let me exactly it. Yep.
Let me ask you now, if you have a diagnostic thing in it and it stops because you have a bad RAM somewhere, can you actually find out which RAM is bad?
No, not from that test
card. So all it tells you is something's bad.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Does it do checks on the ROMs too, like some sort of checksum or seriously a calculation, see if the ROM, like if you burnt your own, like it was bad.
If you burnt your own ROM or extended ROM, yeah, correct. But for RAM, I mean, it's just like the Commodore 64 one. It won't tell you the specific chip. It'll just tell you one of them's bad. But at least like I tell people when people ask, well, will this tell me exactly what's wrong? No, it'll point you in the area. It'll point you to what's wrong, but it won't tell you it within that. But at least you've got one specific bus to check as opposed to,
the whole thing. Yeah.
It's
it
Christmas
just says
lights.
something broken with it.
I do remember somebody on the CoCo 3 did make one that actually, if you had the original Tandy 16 chip satellite board, it would tell you specifically which chips were not functioning properly. But I don't think anything with the CoCo 1 and 2 ever did that. And I don't think it ever went past 512K. They never upgraded it. And now, of course, you've got static RAM and a bunch of things. Like it's not 16 chips anymore, so it'd be totally inaccurate now.
Yeah.
Well, the Tandy cartridge would tell you what chip number it was, but that was limited to like the D
16K only. Yeah.
So there was a CoCo 3 diagnostics that Tandy released. The manual of it is up in the archive, but no software ever showed up there.
There's one of those unicorn softwares we're trying to find again, because I think it was only used by Tandy techs in the repair centers. I don't think it was ever released to the public. So another one to try to find. Some comments here. Automotive Retro says, I'm a bit late, not sure if you covered this, but any suggestion on what standard maintenance I should do to my CoCo 2, for instance, for the Amiga, remove the Barta? Not sure if that's a typo. What should I check in my CoCo 2?
Well, I don't think the CoCo 2's got a battery in it. So,
no.
I mean, the Varta is a battery manufacturer. That's the battery plague that every Amiga...
where it leaks and destroys everything.
Yeah. Right.
You're okay with the CoCos. No leaking Vartas there.
Doesn't really need any maintenance other than clean it and reseat stuff and keep the coffee out of it.
Yeah, actually, we got lucky. We generally CoCo's did not get bad caps either. For the
No,
most
that
part.
was we were too early for the bad cap plague.
Yep.
And
I mean, I've only once seen a cap go on a CoCo, which led me to believe, I don't think it was the cap as much as something had happened that caused the cap to go. It's not something I've ever seen.
although it's interesting, Tandy hot glued all of their caps down with a type of glue that looks particularly vile right now. It certainly looks like something's eating the board up.
Vulcanizes into that kind of brown gooey mess. I mean, that was just to stop oscillation on some of the larger caps, like the I think there's a 10,000 ferret cap in there that will oscillate like crazy if you don't glue it down.
Yeah, you get new people.
Yeah, new people look at that and they go, "That the cap's leaking."
And they say, "Can you look at this and tell me if it's leaking or if something's bad?" And everybody always winds up telling them, "That's fine.
It's not.
It's just glue."
Yeah, it was just glue to keep it from oscillating. The problem is it is broken down into a nasty mess. It's really all it is, but it's not going to do any damage to your machine. It's just
honestly, the chip I think I've seen blow up in the CoCo the most is probably the CPU, and that's because somebody took a cardboard cart and crossed 5-volt line onto some other pin by putting it in crooked when the computer's on, and then poof. And sometimes it partly blows it, so like just the halt line's gone, so which means it works fine on everything but disk drives, because that requires a halt line to finish sector. So your disk drive works unreliably or not at all. Yet you can load off cassette and play a game and it works fine. So
I mean, the reality is these are like 35-year-old machines, right? And I know that Commodore, for example, to like Bill Hurd and others from the Commodore days,
309 made differently or no?
Yeah, that was more modern technique because they didn't bring that out till 85.
Yeah.
And then of course Motorola, because that's not what they contracted for, didn't let them tell anybody all the stuff they put in.
Do you know they're still making 6809s and 6309s at the company called Rochester? Are you familiar with that?
I think Hitachi themselves are still making them, to be perfectly honest with you.
Really? Because
so they're making them so the batch we bought that we sell are new. They're not like new old stuff.
Really?
Yeah, and so we hired, like, we've got a like a parts headhunter that we contract to find certain unique parts through resellers and
like CoCo SDC chips, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Because frankly, it just makes our life a lot easier. Like I don't have the time to sit there and hunt, so we've got an outfit that does it for us, and the chip is still used in the defense industry, believe it or not, for certain things. So there are limited runs that are made by Hitachi themselves. And we were able to, I think the last 100 we bought were actual, like newly, like they've got new manufacturer dates on them. And from Hitachi, they're not making a ton of them, but they still are, because mil spec requires them to, right? Part of the deal is if you do create certain mil spec things, you need to commit to X number of years of manufacturing it. And they're still kind of well within that window. What defense products are still used? I have no idea. No clue, but clearly something somewhere out there, some missile guidance system or something is still using the chip.
Is it still the 40-pin dip?
It is, yeah.
Okay. Well, they must be using CoCo's for the missile launches.
Well, listen, like we sell a lot of floppies, mostly with OS 3.2 for the Amiga on them, and our Wi-Fi modems for the 64. You can actually buy the software on, 3.5 and 5.25 inch floppies. There's a company here in Toronto that's still manufacturing floppy disks solely for military and the medical industry. In a conversation with them, they're like, there's like 3 MRI machines at a local hospital that, still uses a floppy for certain things. And we're not going to replace the $50 million MRI machine because it works just fine, simply because the transferring interface is a floppy. Like, that's ridiculous. So they still make, they make VHS tapes, they make audio tapes, they make all sorts of magnetic media. So there still are places making them. It's just sometimes it's hunting them down and finding them. Thank God for the military industry. That's all I got to say.
I think David Ladd is now frantically searching for the name of the place that makes floppy disks.
Exactly. I could stand some new 5.25s right now.
Ideal medical or ideal magnetic media. You can. I think the smallest order you got to buy is 500 though. They're not going to do a spin up for a box of 10.
Group buy.
Yeah.
That's a small order for David Ladd.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem for him.
Yeah, I
What
think
was the URL again?
They don't have a website, but it's called Ideal Magnetic Media Limited.
Do you yourself still have any media from back when you were a kid?
Oh, yes. Boxes and boxes and boxes.
So you got rid of your hardware, but kept the software.
I never got rid of my Commodore 64. That I still had. The CoCo is what I got rid of because I just grew up in a regular kind of middle class blue collared family, and my dad's like, "You want a Commodore 64? You better sell the damn Tandy I sold you or I bought you, because I'm not buying you a Commodore 64 as well." But I still got it all. My mother kept it all. I got everything in that regard from my Commodore 64 days forward. I've got every floppy from my Amiga, all of it. Now, whether any of it works is beyond me, but I've got it.
Yeah, I've got shelves here. I won't bring them all out, and I've got shelves back here, a couple filled with floppies there too. So
I have boxes and boxes and stacks. And yep.
I've still got I've still got, for those of you, at least the Commodore 64 fans, I still have a fully sealed Free Spirit drive testing kit that I've had for, I don't know, like 35 years or something like that. It's still like factory sealed, and I don't want to open it. I've still got a few things that kind of sit on the shelf, but most of the boxes are in storage.
Do you have any floppies from the early PC days?
I didn't really get into the PC days until much later in life.
You don't have like Windows 1.0 or 2.0?
No, I think the first Windows machine myself, like personally, was Windows 95, because I held on to my Amiga and used my Amiga right up until the very, very end. I hate Windows. To this day, I own one Windows machine solely for the business, because there's a piece of software we use that's the only thing it runs on. But I can't stand anything. Microsoft.
I loved Windows when it came out. I really did, because the Windows worked well, and you can print things out and do things. But the thing was, where they lied constantly, was they would always say, you watch these videos. You'd watch a video and it would freeze all the time. It would never, or it'd stutter. It would never really work. Until we got into Pentium processors, or some of the Pentium 3s or something with enough RAM or something. But it's the early PCs that were 33 megahertz or 40 or 100. They were worthless when it came to video.
Jesus,
to me,
even that HP in that picture, I think, was running Linux to do the audio streaming.
Yeah, and you got a Mac right beside it too. Which
I've always used. So. Yeah, modern OS, I've always stuck with the Mac. More of a necessity than anything else. But apart from that, I can't stand Windows at all. Never have been able to.
Now, on your Macs, are you running OS 10 on all of them, or do you run Linux on some of them? Or
there's a combination through parallels, through virtualization. I'll run a whole bunch of different things, but primarily, I've got a Mac Mini, like an M1 Mac Mini with a 36-inch cinema display that I use for design and layout, like PCB layout. Because again, my eyes, I'm getting older, so the bigger the screen, the better. And then I've got my MacBook Air, which is an M1 that I kind of just use for, accounting and business purposes and email communications. But that's it. Those are
yes. But did you ever Hackintosh?
Yeah, actually, I think there's an episode of the Live at Leo where I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And you got to remember, Mac OS is just BSD underneath. I had a Mac at work, and I spent my entire life in BSD Windows.
Yeah, I spend more time in a terminal shell than I do anywhere else. Anywhere else. People are like, the disk utility app. I'll be like, I've never used the GUI, but I've used it on command line all the time.
Got a couple comments along that line in the comments too. Pedro says, I use Wine, or I try to use ReactOS instead of Windows. And then Texas Foosballer says VMware Fusion for the win, which is actually what I use here for running Windows 10 right now on my Mac. So
Yeah, the problem with the M1 is the like the x86 emulation, right? So I've got I've got Windows for ARM running in a virtual machine. It's still not. I mean, I wish it was a lot better, and this is why I've got an old Windows machine just to run Sprint layout, because the only thing it runs on is Windows. But if it wasn't for that one piece of software, I don't think I'd have any Windows machines.
Now running Wine, don't you have a problem with Wine and eBay?
Yes, yes, I do. It's a bad combination.
Well, you wind up buying more than you ordered for, or?
Yeah, well, God never should allow me to use eBay when I'm drinking.
Except for dragons, apparently.
Well, no, that's like when we're done this, I'm going to go start hunting, because that's a legitimate business expense. Why I have now 5 CoCo ones, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but your SDC will work on it, so that's good.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean,
that the diagnostic card is something.
But now it's the diagnostic card. The diagnostic card I need to start investigating.
Karen, since you're in the chat there in England, if you know of anybody that has a dragon that might be able to be sold to Frank there, you can get in contact with them.
Please.
Even a broken one, probably easier, right?
Yeah, well, I mean,
yeah, they're both the Motorola reference design was used for both the Dragon and the CoCo. So I mean, most of the hardware is exactly the same. The keyboard's mapped differently in the PIA, but that's pretty well most of it. The disk drives are totally different. That's one.
Well, when you do get it and you try it, post it. Let's see your results.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I will. And if not, then we're gonna have to make sure that it will work.
So that's an interesting point. What computers besides Tandy bought everything from Microsoft? So Tandy bought Standard Basic, they bought Extended Basic, they bought Disk Basic, they bought everything Microsoft sold.
Well, so did Commodore, like 64 Commodore, Basic.
But they didn't have Extended Basic for their graphics. It was all poke this, poke that. And then their disk drive was like D-Save, I think. It was like a whole separate standalone world.
Well, and the disk drive is, it's...
And like Dragon then did their own disk drive, which was different than everybody else's. And I'm just wondering, is Tandy the only place that just bought all the Microsoft crap and put it out the door? Or...
Well, the 64, I know. The 64 Basic was Microsoft.
Well, right.
So was the 128 Extended Basic. It's Basic 7 or whatever it was. The disk drives in a Commodore 64 are unlike anywhere else because disk drives themselves are computers themselves. So all the processing is done on the disk drive, and any communication goes back and forth, just goes across the IEC, the serial bus.
The 1541s have 2K of RAM and a 6502 in them.
Yeah, and so do the 1580 ones and the 70 ones. I mean, they all do. I mean, you're just literally pushing a command over serial, and then the actual drive does all the processing and just spits it all back.
There was some disk duplicator software that you could literally unplug from the drives and just let the drives duplicate one to the other.
Yeah, let the drives do everything. I mean, hell, there's a guy who's like created a demo that fully runs on the disk drive itself.
Yeah, there's a Commodore Drive demo scene.
A little bit of hacking and get VGA output from the 1540 from the actual drive itself. Yeah.
Wow. So why didn't anybody try and make an actual floppy drive and a controller that would work more like a CoCo does for
the 64?
Yeah, actually they did. The early PET drives were IEEE 8488, was it?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So why wouldn't they use that and fix all the crap? You know,
they're very
backward
expensive.
Compatibility. Yeah, and backward compatibility too.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of the stuff they had to make sure continued to work with the older stuff.
I've actually seen the boards for the parallel drives for the PET. Those things are literally
huge,
about this big square.
And how big is that for the audio listeners, Mark, who can't see you?
Oh, okay. Do you do what, 50 centimeters square?
Yeah.
I mean, they're honking big. They're bigger than the motherboard.
Like two PCI full blown PCI slots.
Yeah.
So when you made a program for the Commodore 64 and you send it to the drive, it has to have extra software just to operate the drive in it included.
No, you don't. But some people, some creative designers would use the actual CPU in the drive to enhance what you're doing, whether it's load times and even offloading some calculations. Because the communication between the 1541 and the C64 is just serial communication. Literally, the 64 would say, I need the directory listing. And it would just tell the drive that via the serial bus. Then the drive would do all the work to build the directory listing and then just send it back across serial. That's all.
Instead of reading a raw,
very slow serial too.
So you just
very slow serial.
You can't have the CPU, the 6502 or whatever it was, ask the disk for what's on it and then read it directly.
No, in my mind, this is like the deload command that was used to load stuff from Microsoft
network controllers
or whatever. Do you the Commodore asks the drive, send me some stuff? The drive sends it back. It's a deload. It was
exactly what it is.
Yep. It's much more high level oriented than low level. You're not talking to the controller directly. You're basically telling the ROM code or whatever is on the drive. You go get the directory. When you've got the whole thing built up and you have like 6 files and this has been and send it back.
The default Commodore 64 and 1541, literally you load $8, $1, and that loads the directory as like a basic program, and it wipes your basic program out too.
Correct.
Unless you have a wedge loaded that lets you do that and not kill your basic program.
Yeah. The wonders of junior high school computer class and wiping out your program by loading the directory. Yeah, that was wonderful.
Exactly. Yep. All the time.
That's why I love my Epix fast load cartridge.
And we had 1 floppy drive to every 4 Commodore 64s, I do believe.
Ooh.
Yeah, we have our own freeload cartridge for the 64 with modified code to support the SD.IC. Just not plugging anything, but it's there.
I love my CoCos.
We got lucky because they actually chose the same controller chip the early PCs did, so we could read PC DOS disks, no problem, right to them the whole bit. In fact, there's a utility for that built into the 990 AOU. It's not the fastest one. If you want that, you get MSF. But MSF was great because we ran natively. We used it at work all the time. You just do dir/a. Here's your 3.5-inch 720K DOS disk, and I could just copy files back and forth and initialize the drive. Choose what do I want, OS9 format or disk basic format or IBM PC MS-DOS format.
We had a J&M controller that had a program written on it in the ROM, I guess, that if you hit a certain key or forget which it is, you can do diagnostics.
Yeah, you actually get the memory minder disk. You need that special alignment disk, and it would actually do the full low-level diagnostics on it.
And you could also do the speed of the drive. Can you do that kind of thing on a Commodore 2 or check the drive speed? No?
Well, you can check the drive speed, but again, that's all code stored on the ROM of the 1541. Right. So you're literally just asking for it. And the 1541 itself is doing all the hard work and then just sending it back to you.
Yeah. Actually, it's a pretty decent system. The fact that the drive was intelligent enough to do those.
The deal, but I think one lot, I got 25 at once. I was like, wow, fantastic. What the hell do I need 25 of these things for? But they've come in handy. They've come in handy either for parts or people want to buy them.
Cool. Never can have too many retro parts.
Yeah, you can, as my wife points out all the time. You absolutely can.
Okay, Mark O is saying that he's seeing some stuttering and stuff on Twitch and on YouTube.
Yep.
So anybody in the chat there, are you guys seeing that too, or is that local to Mark? I guess is the first question, because I know Mark Mosley, you'd mentioned that your internet was actually down this morning. So
it was, and so far during the show, it did dropped a few frames, and now for some reason it's telling me it's dropped 0 frames. So
right, I just got to reload to try again and reload it, and now it's fine. So I don't know, something might have just.
Well, I didn't have any problem with Zoom, so
it's the internet. It's always weird.
Well, why did they call it Twitch?
I still remember it was called Justin TV. So
I blame the whole thing on Amish hackers.
Right.
Yeah, Wayland on he says YouTube just stopped for a moment earlier. I had to reload, so it looks like it's been going a little bit, but reloading seems to fix it for the most part.
Nobody wants to hear me. That's probably why.
No, it's just too much awesomeness for YouTube, I think.
Yeah. That's what we're going with. Too much awesomeness. Sure. We'll go with that.
I got another question for you.
Sure.
Because I haven't heard any stuttering in my end.
What do you think about the future of this what we're doing? Do you think it's going to eventually just be a small percentage of people that have these things, or do you think that people are going to start manufacturing again, like the CoCo and the Commodore 64? And I mean, they've already done that to the 64 to a degree, I guess. But,
I mean, it's kind of hard to quantify the numbers, right? But if you if you take a step back and look at where the retro community was, say, 5 years ago to where it is today, it's doing nothing but progressing, right? Now, I mean, I can't really speak too heavily on the CoCo stuff, but if you take a look at the 64, in the past 5 years, we've had every revision of the C64 motherboard has been recreated perfectly and accurately. The molds for the casing have been found. There have been multiple runs of new cases made. There is, sorry?